So what's up with these jabroni ass niggas trying to see Compton? The industry can hate you, fuck them all in your mama. How many options you really got? I mean, it's too many options. I'm finna pass on this body and John Stockton. Beat your ass and hide the Bible if God watching. Sometimes you gotta pop out and show niggas. Certified boogeyman, I'm the one that up the score with him. Walking down whole time.
These have no business having this much goddamn heat. Fuck!
Say Drake, I hear you like I'm young. You better not ever go to cell block 1. To any bitch that talk to him and they in love, just make sure you hide your little sister from him. They tell me Trev's the only one that get your hand down. And party at the party playing with his nose now. And Baka got a weird case, why is he around? Certified lover boy, certified pedophile. That fuck him up. I'ma do my stuff. Why you trolling like a bitch, ain't you tired? Trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor. They not like us. 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 You think the bay gon' let you disrespect Pop, nigga? I think that open show gon' be your last stop, nigga. They cold foul. I don't know why you still pretend. What is the owl? Bird niggas and bird bitches. Go. The audience not dumb. Shape the stories how you want. Hey Drake, they're not slow. Rabbit hole is still deep. I can go further, I promise. If there's some B-rest, that's for bitching. You Malibu most wanted. Hey, no love boy, you ball boy. Let's get a rate or something. Since 2009, I had this bitch jumping. You niggas will get a wedgie. Be flipped over your boxes. Well, over your fold. The other vaginal option. Pussy. You can better straighten they posture. Got famous all up in contact. Might write this with a doctor. Got a pop star, quit hiding. Fuck a caption, won't action. No accident. I'm hands on. He fuck around, get polished. Fuck no rain girl like he was in jail. That's conniving. Then get his face tatted like a bitch apologizing. I'm glad these roads came home. Y'all didn't deserve him either. From Alondra down to Central. Nigga better not speak on Serena. And your homeboy is subpoena. That predator moving flocks. That name gotta be registered and placed on neighborhood watch. I lean on you niggas like another line of walk. Yeah, it's all eyes on me and I'ma send it up the block. Ay, put the road label on me, I'ma get them dropped. Ay, sweet chin music and I won't pass the ox. Ay, how many stocks do I really have in stock? Ay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5. Ay, devil is a lie, here 69 God. Ay, freaky ass niggas need to stay their ass inside. Ay, roll their ass up like a fresh pack of Zod. Ay, city is back up, it's a must, we outside. Ay. They not like us. 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 Once upon a time, all of us were same chains. Only still double down, calling us some slaves. Atlanta was the mecca, building railroads and trains. Bear with me for a second, let me put y'all on game. The settlers were choosing town folk to make them richer. Fast forward 2024, you got the same agenda. You run to Atlanta when you need a check balance. Let me break it down for you. This the real nigga challenge. You call future when you didn't see the club. Little baby help you get your legal world. 21 in your first street cred. Thug makes you feel like you a slime in your head. What Quavo said you could be from north side. What 2 Chainz say you good but he lied. You run to Atlanta when you need a few dollars. No, you not a colleague, you a fucking colonizer. The family matter and the truth for the matter. He was God's plan to show y'all the liar.
Why the fuck are these edits so goddamn neat? My god. Hi, hello.
He a fan, he a fan, he a fan. He a fan, he a fan, he a freaky Freaky ass nigga, here 69 God. Freaky ass nigga, here 69 God. Hey, 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 run for your life. Hey, 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 run for your life. Freaky ass nigga, here 69 God. Freaky ass nigga, here 69 God. Hey, 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 run for your life. Hey, 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 run for your life. Say OV ho. Say OV ho. Then step this way, step that way. Then step this way, step that way. Are you my friend? I'm my friend. Then step this way, step that way. Then step this way, step that way.
Why are these so heat? Why are these so heat? They're so ridiculous. They're so fucking heat.
No. Aye. Monster Hunter, beat ho, Debo, Benny Rat, nigga, get a free throw. Man down, call an ambulance, tell him breathe, bro. Nail a nigga to the cross, he walk around like Tizo.
There it is.
Pony ass niggas trying to.
Oh no. How did y'all motherfuckers spend so much goddamn time perfecting this shit inside the fucking Genesis remix font? Oh my god.
Dear Adonis, I'm sorry that that man is your father, let me be honest. It takes a man to be a man, your dad is not responsive. I look at him and wish your grandpa would have wore a condom. I'm sorry that you gotta go work and stand behind him. Life is hard, I know, and trying to just always go beat us home. Sometimes our parents make mistakes that affect us until we grown. And you're a good kid that need good leadership. Let me be your mentor, since your daddy don't teach you shit. Never let a man piss on your leg, son. Either you die right there or pop that man in the head, son. Never fall in the escort business, that's bad religion. Please remember, you could be a bitch even if you got bitches. Whether right or wrong, you're a black man. Even if it don't benefit your goals, do some push-ups, get some discipline. Don't cut them corners like your daddy did. Fuck what them Zippy did. Don't pay to play with them Brazilians. Get a gym membership. Understand, I'm throwing rocks and hiding hands, that's law. Don't be ashamed about who you with, that's how he treats your moms. Don't have a kid to hide again, be sure. 5% will comprehend, but 95 is lost. Be proud of who you are. Your strength comes from within. Got a superstars that's real, but your daddy ain't one of them. And you nothing like him. You'll carry yourself as king. Can't understand me right now. Just pay this when you're 18. Dear Sandra, your son got some habits, I hope you don't undermine them. Especially with all the girls that's hurt inside this climate. You're a woman, so you know how it feels to be in alignment. With emotion, hoping the man can see you and not be blinded. Dear Dennis, you can't wait.
It's like you guys are making creepypastas. Oh my lord. Alright, enough fun. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we find ourselves gathered here today to list ourselves to the newest bullshit coming directly out of the mouth of Lindsay Ellis. It is going to be hot, it's going to be wet, it's going to be turbid, and it's going to be full of dog shit. Let's get into it.
Dimanche 19 juin 1994 et il est 16h22 à Kigali dans le quartier de la le Rwanda appartient à ceux qui le défendent vraiment. Et vous, les DND, vous n'êtes pas des Rwandais.
I am not a morning
That's wonderful. What did any of that shit mean, Lindsay?
person, but do you know who is? So every morning when Dad goes to work, someone marches into my room, and half-conscious every morning we pull out our laptop and put on Miss Rachel.
We're twisting.
So you're a tablet mom. Congratulations. I'm happy that you have a child. However, it's not about to excuse the bullshit that you've been saying inside this video, some of which I've seen because of Sitch and Adam.
We're twisting, now we stop.
But oh no, what's this? A very credible and good faith organization is calling on the Attorney General to investigate Miss Rachel for anti-Semitism crimes. How unexpected. It's from a group called Stop Anti-Semitism, one word. It's run by Barbara, and she's a serious person. Oh, she was anti-Semite of the week? Damn, I gotta watch what I say. I don't want to be anti-Semite of the week. Please don't make me anti-Semite of the week. So the issue that a lot of people raise against Miss Rachel is that she's spreading misinformation, or she's taking things out of context, or she's showing a one-sided story.
Miss Rachel has not only ignored brutality inflicted upon Jewish and Israeli kids, she's also shared numbers and a narrative that aligns with a known terror organization.
And most importantly,
Mr. Rogers in our day, he didn't start lecturing kids about Russia or Iran or the nuclear threat. That's not your job.
Yes, children's educational media, famously apolitical.
Would you like to join me? It looks awfully enjoyable, but...
Oh, lovely. We're starting off with bullshit fresh. Yeah, guys, there's nothing political about the fact that you're able to understand things that happen first. Before civil liberties comes personal responsibility. Power Rangers is not telling you to go commit acts and crimes of war, and neither was Kamen Rider, and neither was Kyukinshi Ryukendo. And neither was the Genders. And neither was fucking Teletubbies. Or Dragon Tales. Or Shaolin Showdown. Or Avatar The Last Airbender. None of these shows were telling you to go do political action. None. None of them were telling you to do political action. The fact you keep saying that it must have been political action, whenever you bring out old examples of basic conservative concepts with a liberal bent, these things are not the same as you insisting that they must actually be down in the diet commies, even though some of them probably were. The message is so good, it expands across the class boundaries and touches you deep in your heart coochie. After infiltrating and nutting inside of your ear coochie. It is so ridiculous to insist that actually, they don't know they don't know. Chat, do they know? Do they know that all the things that they claim was a part of the youth was actually ours? That it was one of ours? It was one of ours? Please, fucking gag me. Please, out of here with this nonsense. This sheer ghettofied fucking trash. It always comes from the same place, from the same individuals, touting the same fucking lie every time. Please, spare us.
I don't have a towel or anything.
Oh, you share mine.
Okay.
Well, I know how busy you are. But sometimes just a minute like this will really make a difference.
So this video is going to be a little dense and maybe even a little serious, and while it is surrounding a topic that I know no one has strong feelings about, let me just make a caveat here that I'm not going to expect anyone to agree with everything that I have to say. That's not realistic, and frankly, that's kind of not even good.
You've got to think yourself. You're all individuals.
Yes, we're all individuals.
You're all different.
Yes, we're all different.
I'm not.
Did you know that if you say subscribe on desktop, the little subscribe button gets a little rainbow around it? And that's the only good thing I will say about YouTube today. So let us embark on a little journey together. Come on. Yeah, so I thought we could, talk in here. Oh yeah, we grew this. I'm just blowing you away with this natural affect, aren't I? But that's the thing, we're making a little bit of content, and I just so happen to be making food at the same time. I'm a mom. I don't have a lot of time. I have to do both of these.
In another timeline, she's happy with children and is naturally capable of staying inside of the fact that the nostalgia chick has now become the nostalgia mom. That's a timeline that exists, and we can't go to that timeline because Lindsay Ellis is desperate to be taken seriously by fucking commies.
These things at the same time. Okay, so according to the Deep Miss Rachel lore, when Rachel Accurso's first child was transitioning into those learning to speak years, the family had to seek speech therapy for a speech delay.
I think for my son, his brain wasn't really connecting with his mouth, so we really needed to see what the mouth was doing. I wanted something for him so bad that would help him, and when it wasn't there, I thought maybe we could create it for him and other kids.
While in speech therapy, she noticed that there were no quality online resources for early language development. And I mean like early.
Can you say mama? Mama. Mama.
And as she already ran these music workshops for toddlers in New York, she decided she would be the change she wanted to see in the world and began uploading videos in 2019. Miss Rachel's videos are not just for babies either. There's this sort of built-in assumption that a caregiver is also watching with the child because there's all sorts of notes for parents throughout the videos. Sometimes she'll talk about milestones, sometimes she'll give suggestions, sometimes she'll explain why she's doing what she's doing.
Wow!
You're going to be learning to use the potty?
And this stands in great contrast to most shows for very young children.
So, occasionally, and more now, more than just occasionally, so I guess a lot of the time, whenever Zulian's watching anything, he is watching the prototypical Nickelodeon format. The normal Nickelodeon format would be the Nick Jr. format, which is the, can you show me where you can find that bullshit? Yeah, that's right. That's that bullshit. And this format is common because it allows the children to be interactive. We've all seen it. We've all interacted with it. We've all watched the material that popularized it. Hell, even though Blue's Clues, I guess, is now considered off the air after people have, decided to stop simping after the most recent host, after White Guy, which was I swear, not Somali, but one of the Browns, Chet. One of the Browns. After people stopped simping after his abs as it was going off air, as they jumped the shark with a particular form of animation they wanted to use to make his generation's Blue's Clues pop. A lot of that content now just exists on Nick Jr. Let's see here. Chase and the Monster Machines, Paw Patrol, obviously, Bubble Guppies. My brain is short-circuiting because all of the ones that are coming to my brain I know aren't on there specifically, but are more like on PBS Kids. Shit like Cyber Chase, shit like Dragon Tales. All of those shows were designed off the same shit. And most children grew up with that as the medium. If they weren't watching Bernie, and if they weren't watching the one with the clown woman, and if they weren't watching the ones like Zaboomafoo, they were watching something comparative like this. I've learned that Miss Rachel is something like a social phenomenon, where other parents and step-parents just are in awe at their ability to get the child to spastically jump at the screen, jumping for joy. And it's because of the particular way that she used developmental tricks to make her show unique in that way. All of which is a good thing. However, the point you're about to make is about to piss me the fuck off to no end.
It isn't just what she produces and the relative novelty of focusing on early language acquisition. Obviously, that has exploded in popularity since Miss Rachel has. Kids like songs. They just do. And Rachel, with her music director, husband, and their cadre of Broadway actors, they just make better arrangements of the classics. Your Old MacDonalds, your Boondos, etc. B-I-N-G-O and Bingo was his name. They do have a lot of original songs as well. The Life of a Mom is just so much spam. They have a lot of original songs as well, most of which are bangers, which is fortunate because if you have a toddler, you know if they like something, you are going to be listening to it at least 50,000 times. I'm so happy. No shade to the Super Simple crew. Super Simple is fine. It's just kind of hard to compete with the cast of Aladdin on Broadway, singing about pooping. In 2023, a TikTok video went viral accusing Rachel of teaching about pronouns.
Thanks a lot, you idiot. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Thanks a lot.
Which, now that I think about it, is in fairness, toddlers do struggle with pronouns. Well, anyway, the pronoun thing never happened, of course, but it did make certain people realize that one of Rachel's regular collaborators on her show is a non-binary trans person named Jules. Jules sings about insidious trans issues like walking. Walking, 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 hop, 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 hop. And stuffy.
Taking things out of context. That's not what the people were complaining about, but okay, Lindsay, let's just take your word for it.
Give your stuffy a big, big hug. Give your stuffy a big, big hug. Make them feel so safe and loved.
Stuffies only have two genders. It's just science, okay? But the relevant outrage to this discussion began in May of 2024 when Rachel did a fundraiser where she would record a personalized cameo for you or your child.
I am now on Cameo, and all the money raised are...
Ah, so now you're actually to the point where the actual thing happened, which is that people asked her to fucking say the thing. Thanks for finally telling the honest truth after setting up the lie that you wanted to tell in the H-Bomber style. Certainly you've learned all you can from your fucking white master, haven't you? When you get to the point, chat, when you see it, when you get to the point that this is about to flip to, you're gonna wonder how the fuck did we get here, okay? You're gonna wonder how the fuck we got here. And it's gonna be so great.
On my end, fees, tips, it is all going to Save the Children's Emergency Fund.
A nonprofit which at the time was doing a drive that focused on hunger in multiple regions, one of which was Gaza. 4 days later, she uploaded the following to TikTok.
The bullying is so bad. It's so bad.
Interesting.
I don't care about all kids. It's like, it just hurts so bad. That is who I am. I can do this.
After the Bully to Tears video, she became more vocal and consistent with her advocacy, not just raising money for hungry children, but bringing attention to the violence in the region.
I saw a picture of 2 babies in Gaza, and their thighs are like...
So, people asked her to speak on things. People then antagonized her. And as the left wing did, why would we ever waste a controversy?
This small. We can't let children starve. That is not who we are.
Very much pearl-clutching commenced, at first with right-wing media outlets like Fox News, The Times, and The New York Post, and then, emboldened by the new administration, groups like Barbara's, which called for the Attorney General...
Yes, emboldened by the new administration. No other reason. No other reason. Babylon B, what are you doing here? Whose name can I say here in this moment? George Alexopoulos, what are you doing here? Lauren Chen, welcome back, the roaming millennial. What are you doing here?
To investigate Miss Rachel, suggesting that because she has done paid partnerships in the past, she's being paid by Hamas, a group with an influencer partner program apparently. Why has a children's content...
If Hamas owns the PLO, this is not big enough. If Hamas owns the PLO, and the PLO is the organization / government that is responsible for Gaza, and they are effectively being used as meat shields, and you're trying to raise things for Palestinian groups that are known to have been ties or outright shell companies to source money, Nigeria style, to the organization, are people in the wrong for calling out this connection plainly and obviously where it can be seen and noticed? Apparently the answer is yes. It's a sin. It's all a sin, chat. We're all guilty of the crime of jigabooness. Now, she's not going to lay out how, but it's our fault, okay? Collectively, me and you, right here. Us.
Creator who has never previously engaged with the Israel-Palestine conflict suddenly posted over 50 times in support of one side, often repeating their propaganda. Given that she has rarely commented on politics before, and even faced backlash when she did, the change is suspicious. So YouTubers being paid off by foreign assets is a thing that happens, but I think this might be a little silly. So, Miss Rachel sings songs about... I should put that on silent. So, Miss Rachel sings songs...
You're not quirky. And hiding your content by hiding behind majority of Nebula is why you Nebula niggas are so fucking boring.
What do you think?
You have no teeth. No teeth. Also, Leadhead wants to become one. Because somebody's realizing that not many people in their audience actually wants to support their content. Especially not directly. Surprise, surprise. Who could have figured that out? I guess it's a mystery.
It's about like brushing teeth and pooping in the potty. So the most common argument goes, she should stay in her lane.
Everybody feels they have to get on the activist bandwagon now. Miss Rachel, you don't know anything about the Middle East, the Middle East, the Middle East.
Oh yes, again, famously apolitical.
And I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service.
Ever since he successfully and apolitically lobbied Congress to grant funds for the creation of public television on the argument that television could be educational, Fred Rogers...
Once again, Power Rangers is not telling you to go out into the streets and burn down the Wendy's.
...has been the gold standard.
The truth is that...
Just him? Not also Jim Henson? Who arguably did all of it without ever having to necessarily get political? And arguing that, again, in the process that... personal civilian liberty and civil duties are important for everything that is necessary to the function. You somehow forget that this is a part of the fucking goal. The goal is to get everybody on the same page, not to attempt to push them to the position that you apparently want to put them in. which is to act like a shitter? Because apparently that's cool to you? Question mark?
That everybody has something special inside them, and nobody's more important than anybody else. Just like you, my television friend.
Fred Rogers and Rachel Accurso also have a great deal in common as real human people, and not just the caricatures of themselves they play on their shows. Both specialized in children's education, both studied music. This knife is just incredibly dull. I don't know if you can tell. I bought it at Joann's before it went out of business. Mr. Rogers at Dartmouth and Miss Rachel at NYU. Both are motivated by the teachings of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They both wrote or co-wrote their own original songs, and they both make it a point to connect with the child audience.
Always remember, you're a great kid.
You are the only one like you, my friend.
What's more smart to say? To say that you have nothing about you that's special at all, or that every single one of you have something intrinsic to yourself that makes you special, and that every single person should have a positive view about themselves? What's the better thing to support and to teach children in early development? Or should we just skip all that and get right to the part where they become child soldiers to their political activism and they immediately start weaponizing themselves like so? Or Greta Thunberg. I hate leftists. I hate leftists so much.
I like you.
And there's a reason they do it like this. And it's not just in order to compete with 30-minute toy ads or Family Finger videos. The reason is science. In the late 1960s, 97% of all American households... When I say dull, look, I haven't had time to get it sharpened, okay? As a housewife, I'm supposed to do it myself, but I just don't have time. I'm too busy filming content. In the late 1960s, 97% of all American households owned a television set and preschool...
What content? Oh, that's right. Nebula. Things that people can't afford because they don't have the money! Your own arg is defeating it. Your own arg is defeating it. If you're a mom that is so busy that you don't have time and you're supposed to do it all yourself, as your intentional meme goes, then you wouldn't even be here to do this. You would unironically be in the same position as Lauren Chen. However, you do have the time because that's how you designed Nebula. On purpose. But then, of course, if that was the argument, why did you put your last popular video, air quote, popular, why did you put your last popular video on Nebula first before then releasing it to YouTube? There's an easy answer here. Anyone who's smart knows what the answer is, and you'll get a cookie if you can guess it.
Children watched an eye-blistering 27 hours of television per week. So it was not a terribly realistic goal to get rid of screen time in the house. So the goal instead became make it value-added, educational. Enter Sesame Street in 1969. Its mission was to help close the early childhood education gap by teaching underserved children. This is why Sesame Street looks the way it does. It's not set in like a suburban Levittown, but in the inner city, which in the days before gentrification was, let's just say it was less expensive to live there in the 1960s and 70s. During the early development...
Why are you telling people half-truths? Say what it is. After all, that's the reason why people want reparations, right? They were technically considered to be shitholes. Where the most dangerous thing you could be is around a monkey in an urban jungle. Say the whole thing! That's why people escaped the cities and went to the suburbs.
Of Sesame Street, the producers traveled the U.S. and Canada to interview experts in child development, education, and television. Out of this came some of the most in-depth studies ever done on how kids learn up to that point. And I don't mean just for television, I mean like in general. The R&D side of Sesame Street became Sesame Workshop, which conducts research on child learning to this day. I know children's programming is famously apolitical, but this is part of what the Corporation for Public Broadcasting supports when they finance shows like Sesame Street, not just producing content, but also funding research. Well, funded.
Wow.
The focus of Sesame Street in those early years was academic basics, letters, numbers, colors, patterns, words, that sort of thing. But beginning in the 1980s, episodes shifted focus more to feelings.
Because I know what it's like to be scared.
You get scared?
Yeah, sure, everybody gets scared sometimes. I'm afraid of haircuts. But luckily the barber gives me a lollipop, and that makes me feel...
Tony Soprano takes a very strange trip down to Sesame Street to make sure that Big Bird is pushing his product. Then he has to ice the count. He makes him count the bullets until he pulls the trigger. I promise, Big Tone. I have your money. I have it by the weekend. Please don't make me do it. The things I have to do to keep myself sane listening to lefties.
Feel better.
Also around this time, the show started addressing real-world issues like divorce, race relations, homelessness, and even the death of a loved one when one of their main human actors, Mr. Hooper, died in 1983.
Big Bird, Mr. Hooper's not coming back.
Why not?
Big Bird, when people die, they don't come back.
Ever?
No, never.
Why not?
Another change in Sesame Street is the increased focus on community and culture. Starting in the early 90s, we started to see a greater diversity of Muppet. In 1991, we got Rosita, who is from Mexico and bilingual.
My name is Rosita, la monstruo de las cuevas.
She is now one of the main Muppets. And where before we only had like Bert and Ernie, who were yellow but like white-coated, we now have Muppets of color like G. Young and cousins Gabrielle and Tamir. Presently, the child recurring cast.
Probably because it's not the same company, and it has been feature creep. Certainly, we could always argue and say, but this would be in Jim Henson's original design. And then I would point you in the direction of how lefties, who are super happy to be Disney-bounding adults, like you, Lindsay, are very, very happy to see the destruction of his legacy. Nice divine. Actually, that's the first divine of the fucking patch. Would it be happy to watch and see, or tongue-in-cheek sad, but still not doing anything about it anyways, to see some of the original founding attractions be removed from the parks where they were happily featured? Not much to say there, huh? Not a big concern. No. We're getting political, boys. Boys, we're getting political. We're not getting political. Because Lindsay's a mom, therefore you should take her word for it. Well, guess what? I'm a dad, and I say stuff it.
Consists of Charlie, who is Jewish, and Mia, who has two dads.
One of my dads is Cuban.
I grew up speaking Spanish at home.
My other dad is Jewish.
Being Jewish means having holidays all year round.
Shabbat Shalom.
You can probably guess where this is going.
Sesame Street had made the courageous transition from education to indoctrination.
Here they are promoting it to children. This is Sesame Street. It's made for 3-year-olds. Leaves a TikTok posted this on X. Parents, beware. Sesame Street is grooming your kids.
Sesame Street has been bombarding children with propaganda for some time now.
To use Sesame Street to induct, 3 to 5-year-olds into...
I don't recognize that guy. Not a very effective tactic, Lindsay. I'm supposed to recognize these people, obviously. Obviously, I know who Ben Shapiro and his cloned sister are. Of course, I know who all the normal talking heads of the right wing are. No, I don't. I don't give that much of a fuck, but you do. But unfortunately, Lindsay, it's very important you understand this. Lindsay, most of us are not that political. Lindsay, most of us are not that political. Welcome, Boster.
That which ends up in the streets of West Hollywood.
It's important that you actively protect your kids from watching Sesame Street.
A major change from Sesame Street's early days is an increased focus on developing skills and traits like problem solving, helping, and most importantly, kindness. For the last 10 years or so, the lyrics to the outro song of the show are about growing. This evolution is backed by research that is collated by Sesame Workshop in tandem with other institutions like Harvard Center for the Developing Child. Feelings and social skills like empathy and kindness do not develop like siloed away from the cognitive tools we need for reading and writing.
Mental health can't be separated out from cognitive development and language development and kind of social competence.
They are intertwined. One is integral to the other. Studies show that under the age of 2, no screen time is best. But if you're going to do it, the best way to do it is with the caregiver alongside the child, engaging with the content. This is also why FaceTime is the only recommended screen time by the American Academy of Pediatrics before the age of 2. And why shows like Blue's Clues, Mr. Rogers, and Miss Rachel are generally seen as less harmful compared to something like Cocomelon or the League of Goddamn Super Kitties.
Oopsie kitty.
These are research-backed shows that encourage the child audience to engage via prompts. Why don't I just turn it on silent? You can do that. We have the technology. Sesame Street's increased inclusion of social, emotional, and behavioral topics didn't just arise out of, touchy-feely, millennial, gentle parenting trends. It is rooted in a greater understanding of the developing brain, and over the last few decades is being increasingly integrated into schools as social emotional learning, or SEL. In its broadest strokes, social emotional learning is a tool that helps children understand and manage their own emotions. All of the research correlates greater emotional intelligence with better academic outcomes, lower dropout rates, and greater success later in life. For older children, school districts across the country have been implementing SEL to combat rising sewer slide rates. You can probably
say the real word. This is not a video that's about Miss Rachel. This is a video about politics of the left wing and how much you hate Trump. So, why don't you just say suicide? If they're capable on Sesame Street to talk about death, you're capable as an adult to use your content wisely and actually talk about politics outright and not hide it behind early childhood development, where I'm very certain you're going to get to the lie. I know that one of the lies that has to do with the plane crash happens around 1 hour in, because unfortunately I'm a watcher of Stitch and Adam, and I know, because I already saw parts of the clip before then confirming it myself, that is one of the things you choose to get aggressive about on this topic. But let's ease ourselves into it, chat. We can't blow our load quickly.
Probably guess where this is. Many of the same so-called parents' rights groups that have taken aim at critical race theory and vaccine mandates are now gunning for SEL.
It's going to transform not just education, but your child, for the purpose of achieving social justice.
They talk about power and privilege, which are tenets of critical race theory.
The Federalist has called SEL a vehicle for anti-white racism.
It invades privacy, and it undermines the influence of family and faith in a child's life.
If you wanted to break kids down emotionally, if you wanted to break them down, there would be no better program.
Like CRT and DEI before it, one of the new boogeymans for the won't someone think of the children.
It's not a boogeyman if we're caught you doing it. It's not a boogeyman if you've been caught doing it.
No, not those children brigade is SEL. The Florida Department of Education recently banned dozens of math textbooks because, in the opinion of Commissioner of Education Richard Corcoran, these books included references to critical race theory, inclusions of Common Core, and the unsolicited addition of social emotional learning in mathematics. In this context, SEL in mathematics is basically like adding a story. Abstract concepts like math are hard to learn for young children. That's probably why you remember learning math like Jack has 3 apples, Sally has no apples. Jack sees that Sally is sad and gives her 1 apple. How many apples does Jack have left? Carl is a broadcaster who streams on YouTube. He has 5 channels. He uses 4 of them. Lindsay Ellis is a person who uses a subscription service and a YouTube channel, as well as the many interlinking woven locks that is BreadTube, and all of the people who are a part of it. They have almost seemingly all the power, yet seemingly no verbal audience that is willing to speak up on the major platforms. If Carl makes a tweet on Twitter mocking her for being this much of a coward behind what she wants to say, how fast and how long would it take through natural resources to grow a reaction that then gets a response from Lindsay Ellis? The easy answer is probably wouldn't take that much, if I asked the right person. It'd probably be much easier for somebody like, say, Sam Hyde, obviously. That's what SEL in mathematics would look like. Here is a local parents' Facebook group freaking out because of fears of secret Buddhist indoctrination, because the SEL curriculum focused on mindfulness. The Child Protection League has an entire section of their website dedicated to SEL, claiming, don't be fooled, social emotional learning has been given many names, knowledge-based learning, literature-based, data-driven program, and now multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS, that make it more sellable, more appealing, but regardless of the name, it is still the same ideology. Minnesota's Child Protection League claimed that social emotional learning is a vehicle for critical race theory and is a child indoctrination scheme. There's yet another pro-coaching organization called Defending Education, which has an indoctrination map, which tells you if your local school system might be doing an empathy in the classroom. Concerns about SEL caused parents in one Utah district, of course it was Utah, to freak out because the curriculum was used to disrupt bullying behaviors and others, and to challenge attitudes that make bullying and harassment socially acceptable. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to guess what their objection was based on the information I have just provided. If you guessed use of the word disrupt, congratulations. You are much more in tune with these people than I am. Maybe you're from Utah. The term disrupt is often associated with movement.
Why are you talking about people that come from, quote, flyover states, Lindsay? Don't you think that'd be disrespectful? Oh, wait. That's right. They're the targets that you're trying to discriminate against because they're backwards idiots that don't know anything. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Movements like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, it is extremely clear that the educators want to use SEL to reprogram our children into social justice activists for particular causes and push them to believe that racial, gender, or class identity matters more than unifying as a human race.
How many times have we caught people actively trying to hide them, trying to give children pronouns to use in school away from home intentionally with the purpose of making sure that the parent never found out. When you can stop naming these cases is when you cannot make that argument. Unfortunately, we can keep making that argument because it kept happening and keeps happening, despite how many times we've been told it doesn't happen, alongside transgender shooters. But I'm not going to hold that against people. I'm going to instead hold it against you, because your position is that it doesn't happen and it doesn't exist, and they're reacting over, quote, nothing. After all, they're just Florida dads and Florida moms.
But this rejection of SEL and emotional and social awareness in general is not restricted to public schools or the classroom. Behold, the Daily Wired anti-woke streaming service for babies, Bent Key.
Every day, more kids' content is indoctrinating your kids with radical left-wing garbage.
At the Daily Wire, we don't just complain about problems, we create solutions, which is why we've invested tens of millions of dollars into making Bent Key,
a platform for kids' entertainment that actually reinforces our values and protects kids from the most radical ideas of today.
Born from the belief that parents are on the front lines of shaping kids' values, because this is a war, Bent Key positions itself as content parents can trust when they're not in the room.
The beauty of Bent Key from a parental point of view is that this is really a safe space for your kids. You can put your kids in front of Bent Key and they can spend hours, and no one should spend hours in front of a screen with their kid. But
see, to these people, screen time is not a tool to be used alongside caregivers. It is a babysitting box that you leave on when you want to turn the child off.
And what is Twitch? And what is YouTube to most people? What do active adults use it for? All the time. What are some people who are possibly even listening to my voice right now possibly doing? Why, I am also not just engaging my mind, but my soul in my anger. Debanking and defunding and rebutting you. Everybody in some way in society has their means of using the caveat of time that they have available to listen to things in short form and long form. It is the entire reason why Nebula even has a variety of content on it, from people who are in the exact same HUD box, in the exact same political perspective, across the exact same political lines at all times, no matter what they claim is actually the truth versus what is actually true. People are allowed to use content and view content in different ways. Just because you do not like that they have made their own does not mean you can paint them as some kind of perpetual fucking monster. Too quiet?
put your kid in front of the TV for.
Because this is a war, Bent Key positions itself as content parents can trust when they're not in the room.
The beauty of Bent Key from a parental point of view is that this is really a safe space for your kids. You can put your kids in front of Bent Key and they can spend hours, and no one should spend hours in front of a screen with their kid. But
see, to these people, screen time is not a tool to be used alongside.
How about now, horror? Hi, Tusky.
Side caregivers. It is a babysitting box that you leave on when you want to turn the child off.
you shouldn't put your kid in front of the TV for hours, but for whatever length of time they're there, you can know that they're being exposed to good and beautiful content.
This makes sense, as part of the religious rights agenda is wanting women to be chained to the home. So they make content.
No! No! Who said that? Whom? Give me 5 names. 5 of them. I can almost promise you every single one of them that you're going to name is either going to be a quack, or I'm going to then look at you and say, that's nice, that's cute. Are you a grown adult that has control over your child? Do you not control what you put your child in front of? And if you tell me no, I'm slapping you across the face. Stop it. Stop it. You are not victims. Stop it.
Content to supplement a stressed out stay-at-home mom to give her a few minutes to herself to get some unpaid labor done, rather than creating content designed to watch with your child, which study...
The unpaid labor of choosing to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mother to take care of your children. Something that I'm capable of doing as a stay-at-home dad. Not only the fact that I can do it for 1 household, but for 2. The amount of time in which I spend, of which some people don't necessarily get to see, is a non-endless glory, but there are occasionally sleepless nights and timeless days. There is a difference between people who somehow find themselves in a toxic relationship with a narcissist and people who made a choice. Very clearly, Lindsay is going down the route of women are being victimized and gileaded, and because they're being gileaded into the Handmaid's Tale, they have no agency. Despite the fact the majority of the people who do it with agency are from the position of either having started out with the plan of being dinks that weren't trying, but also weren't preventing, or literally, explicitly, are taking their talents and using their skills to work inside the framework of having all the time, but somehow none of the responsibility, except when they did, except when they didn't, except when they did, except when they didn't, except when they did, except when they didn't. Thus creating the perpetual issue that is us not believing you and looking at our own lives and saying, bitch, where'd you get that from? I should probably not hold this open. This was 100%, and I have drained it, sitting and idling on, like on TikTok. Because it is much more likely that you just are a lazy parent. It's more likely that you're a lazy parent. You're a hands-off lazy parent who is less interested in the world and the people around you and is more interested in her personal fantasy about herself and how she claims she's been abused ever since she had to put the fucking bow tie on. Had to. Chose to. Had to. Air quote. I need to pee. Be back in 1 second. It is much more likely, in the infinite wisdom of Lindsay, the nostalgia chick Ellis, she is incapable of just parsing that she's lazy, and instead of actually pointing the problem where she wants to, she's instead going to use this video to talk up a cope session, while then getting angry about politics, while feigning the tongue-in-cheek, I am so much cooler than the rest of you talk. Just like every other leftist that's a part of the group.
After study shows is much better for their development.
I wish I wasn't different.
Oh man, the songs.
So, for the low price of $100 a year, or about $8.50 a month, wow, that's twice what Nebula costs, you can access upwards of 5 original shows.
We've launched with 4 original shows and a 5th that is original. We didn't create it, but...
There is Chipchilla, probably the most well-known of the original Bentkey products, if for no other reason than it is a conservative ripoff of Bluey. There's Gus Plus Us, a Muppet-like show that has a female lead that borders on copyright infringement.
Yes! We need wood for a campfire!
Most relevant to our discussion is...
Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? It's syndication, Lindsay. It's syndication. If you feel that it's threatening you, then sue about it. If you sue about it, then you're demonstrating that you are feared of it. If you're in fear of it, it means it's working. And if it's working, why are you scared? Don't you have the fucking... Like, don't you have it all locked down? Isn't it just so easy for you to defeat the problem? Because they just are so bad at what they're doing? Question mark? Come on. What are you afraid of? Type shit.
Is A Wonderful Day with Mabel McClay, which is our Miss Rachel / Mr. Rogers knockoff. It's definitely more Rogers than Rachel. The intros to both Mabel McClay and Mr. Rogers begin with a song that is intended to, set the vibe and purpose of the show. Mr. Rogers' intro is surprisingly complex when you actually look at the music. Is despite that complexity, it's not overwhelming for kids in the way that complex arrangements or jazz of any kind often are. There's a reason kids like super simple songs. The intro to A Wonderful Day with Mabel McClay begins with a song that the creators also wrote, which can only be described as, to repeat YouTuber Jose's observation, low effort.
Well, it's a wonderful
all the people you keep mentioning are all leftists. Weird.
Day. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day.
Okay, So they don't have degrees in music. So they don't have a cadre of Broadway actors. So they don't know any world-class jazz pianists. That's whatever, okay? They're on a budget.
The Daily Wire announced that we would spend $100 million.
We're joking. They don't have the ability to hire these people because, you see, they are just copying. They don't have the talent and the skill. This is a really bad helmet. They don't have the talent and the skill to compete against them. Listen, they're doing the best they can, bro. They're doing the best they can. Don't you understand? It's hard to be a content creator. It's hard to do material work like this. Where will they spend that money? On Regan? Regan? She barely gets half to the bread!
$1 million over 3 years to begin our own kids' entertainment company.
Mabel tackles topics like contentment, perseverance, self-control, courage, patience, bootstraps.
I bet you're tougher than you think you are.
All of those things are things you should teach children so that they don't immediately cry whenever they don't get what they want. I'm failing to see the problem here.
You get the idea.
We waited quietly together in the garden, noticing our surroundings.
No, I actually don't get the idea, Lindsay. What are you trying to say about these concepts? I have a man who likes lobsters that likes to talk to you.
And play nice bye.
Prestigious Milford School, an institution once famous for its credo that children should be neither seen nor heard.
Again, the show is much more similar to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, up to and including having a world of make-believe that Mabel uses to illustrate whatever lesson we are learning today. It's bizarrely prescriptive. I guess the word is preachy.
Jasper, he stopped eating all those cookies, and instead you bundled up gifts for his friends, huh?
No, I sure did.
Finally my chance to get rid of that damn dog.
Which is something you don't get with Mr. Rogers, who's more about, like, how to handle the death of a pet. Let's ride the bus. How is this common household product made?
How is this older product better than this newer product in ways that I decided to frame them as bad because I have a vested interest in framing them as bad. I am a good faith argumentator. I don't make things up out of nowhere and antagonize people for reasons I have no reason to do. Perish the thought. What do you take me for?
Come here. This is the source of the tap dancing. Mr. Rogers is more about helping kids understand the world and process their feelings, where Mabel ambles through the episodes like a Megan Mullally on Ativan, telling kids how to act.
I wonder what you'll do the next time you're feeling really excited. I wonder if you'll stop, take a breath, and make a better choice.
See, one of the best way to connect with young children, besides holding a puppy, I say she's a puppy, she's 12. Well, she's about to turn 12. To get them to listen is to get down on their level. Fred Rogers understood this intuitively because he was doing it before there were any studies to back it up.
What's that? What you should do is you should try to meet people halfway and touch hands. Man, that's so weird. That's so weird that we needed specifically to do it the leftist way. It's so weird that I wasn't allowed to do that, except when you specifically said I had to do it while also licking H. Bomber Guy and the janitor's balls. That's so weird.
Which brings us to Blue's Clues, the show that had the most research done for its development since, well, Sesame Street.
Hi out there, it's me, Steve. Have you seen Blue, my puppy? Come on in.
And it's my favorite skater racehead.
Steve, Josh, and that other guy all do the same thing. They get down on the level of the child audience frequently, ask them questions, prompt engagement.
So what was Blue's first clue?
Green.
Oh, right, green.
Mabel, not so much.
That guy. This one right here. Excuse me, Mr. Titan. This is the guy that I'm talking about when I said women were thirsting after him. Much like Power Ranger and also Kamen Rider and, in general, Sentai actors, they tend to be very beautiful people because they hire people that are within their 20s to play younger in their teens. If the characters aren't written as... if the characters are written as teens. And this guy, apparently, is a hunk of palooza. Entire beefcake. With extra meat. I'm not fucking joking. It's like walking into a collection of Joe Magnanello thirst posts, including the one where he was posed with his full cock out. There are women who are unironically simping over this man. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
So what was Blue's first clue?
Green.
Oh, right, green.
Mabel, not so much. Mr. Rogers is over here, like, rolling around on the floor. Miss Rachel is always at eye level. Even with Blue's Clues, where Blue is much smaller than the host, they always find ways to put Blue at their eye level. Mabel is often framed as taller than the camera, or always looking down at that hillbilly dog thing. It's a strange, subtle contrast to other shows that we're discussing. And I have to assume...
they're not made as well, and don't have as much research behind them. Therefore, they're bad. Ooh, stinky.
at least a little bit intentional. Take a look also at how episodes of each show ends. With Mr. Rogers and Miss Rachel, there's always a reminder that the child is valuable and special and cared for by the host.
You have great ideas, and you're very kind. You have a wonderful heart and a brilliant mind.
There's only one person in the whole world like you, and people can like you exactly as you are.
Hell, even VeggieTales, the most famous Christian cartoon in history, does that at the end of every video.
Now, I thought we weren't getting political, so why are we getting religious? It's because, man, look at how even religious cartoons are better than the guy over here trying to push his fucking brand on kids. May your knife chip and shatter.
Made you special, and he loves you very much.
Mabel McClay ain't got none of that. It's never, how did you feel about the thing? It's not even, God made you special and unique. It's always, it's good to feel this about the thing.
It feels good to know that with a little practice, we can be all the way content anytime we choose.
Mostly just proselytizing about whatever Judeo-Christian virtue we've just learned about and how you should always be a Milford man.
What is queer kid stuff?
It's nice to know that we can always stop what we're doing and think about why we're doing it.
I shall be neither seen nor heard. Watch me.
You can always tell a Milford man.
But the creators fully admit taking inspiration from Mr. Rogers, and at least there's flowers given to Mr. Rogers by the facts don't care about your feelings sector. I mean, they wouldn't be so shameless as to attack Fred Rogers for his deep sense of pathos and compassion, right? You could probably guess where
Blame Mr. Rogers, because Mr. Rogers had an optimistic message where everything was special, even if they didn't deserve it, these experts say.
Because this evil man has now ruined a generation of kids.
And the kids of today who grew up with Mr. Rogers were told by him, you're special.
On January 29, 2025, the United States saw the first fatal commercial flight in nearly 16 years.
It begins, chat. What a whiplash, huh?
When a bombardier operated by American Airlines collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, killing all 67 people on both aircraft. It was the deadliest aviation accident in the United States since 2001. This is how El Presidente responded.
Have you spoken to any of the families of the victims of the plane crash?
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site?
You tell me, what's the site? The order?
Or to meet with the first responder?
10 years ago, just that clip.
Let's be serious. That's not a very good clip. However, if you actually understand the context behind the question being asked, the way this was being asked was meant to frame him as bad faith. Despite the fact Trump already had a plan to go speak with and also have a memorial for the victims of the collision. This is the clip that I've learned from Sitch and Adam. And any amount of deeper work, this becomes as bad as the very fine people hoax that people inside the left-wing sphere, such as individuals as Adam Conover, attempted to say they knew things about, but they just wanted to repeat what they were told, because they didn't actually have the information, and wanted to go off with just the optics. Optically, it looks really bad, unless you have the context. Then, you get fucking sick in your stomach.
Clip would be enough to end a career. Now you may not even remember it happening. The instances of Trump posting exercises in wanton cruelty are innumerable. There was this.
People making tweets are the same thing as the president. How dare people make comments online? Meanwhile, over on Wolf Skull, I'm sorry. I mean Blue Skull, I'm sorry. I mean Blue Sky, I mean I'm sorry. I mean replacement Twitter, I mean I'm sorry. I mean on Truth Social, I mean I'm sorry. I mean on alt media apps that you don't use. We can find plenty of examples of lefties being fucking crazy. Not even just using historical examples. Hey, that's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Don't you believe your lying eyes and ears, chat? It is our job to learn to do better and be better by being better. Victims. Allow yourself to get victimized by this fucking Asian woman. Let her do it. Let it happen. If you don't do it, you're a Nazi.
This.
Golden future, a brand new life. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza, #1.
Yes, he actually posted this. Crocodile concentration camp.
Hands.
Are we the baddies?
And there's a good chance you don't remember some, if not all of these, because now it's just background noise. And many within the media ecosystem are only too happy to follow in great leaders' example.
Well, no, because you guys said that if you wouldn't let trans teens do whatever they wanted, they were going to become suicidal. So I'm just wondering, you know, between this and the no surgeries, we should see a rash of teenage suicide this year, right?
If that guy was a white American citizen, they would just call him a MAGA extremist. But he's an illegal alien and he has kids, and now he's the spirit of the community.
The spirit of the community. Just the venom of this guy.
Are we gonna skip over that problem where he just said one of the many things that is a part of that slippery slope that the shitlibs that were once liberal and just turned into any group, any blue, no matter who, actively argued for? Because it started from we want to have marriage, and then became just bake the cake, which actually gave away the game. And then ever since then, it has been the trudging that has now moved to the demons are telling me to kill the Christians. It was a 12-step position. We are currently on step 8. I don't want to tell you what comes after the next 4 positions.
The spirit of the community. He's a good guy.
But I think the telling thing here is just the anger at being asked to factor in the fact that Abrego Kilmar Garcia, you know, he has a life. He has children. People like him. He has a family. He's in the country legally. He's not being held up as some paragon of human virtuousness, and he shouldn't have to be. The point is that he's a human person who deserves, you know, basic human rights and due process, but goddamn, that just makes them so angry. Here's Dean Emeritus of PragerU, Dennis Prager, explaining why empathy bad.
I kind of approach everything with empathy. I'm curious, do you think I'm wrong to do that?
Yeah. Because it's an awful guideline for what is wise. Wisdom and empathy have nothing to do with one another.
8 years ago, his line was, the right is more compassionate, actually.
Liberal asks, does it feel good? The conservative asks, does it...
I hate when my game keeps freezing. This has happened over 12 times in this patch alone. I wish they would fucking fix this. If it keeps happening, I'm switching fucking games. Oh my god, I'm going to mold. Every time, I'm playing a buff-based character, so when I lose my stack state, I'm put into an extremely bad position. Come on, video game. Come on, video game. Come on, video game. Come on, video game. Never-ending latency problems. Fucking Christ almighty. And you're right, you already did warn us about this. See, the reason why somebody like Dennis Prager would say that empathy is not a good thing to just reach for and say they deserve to have human rights, basic decency, and empathy is because the left wing is currently stuck in the death spiral of something that I would call, how do I phrase this exactly with the right words? Because there's the official statement and then there's the words that I'm going to use. A form of learned helplessness based in the form of empathy that disables them from being able to have survival instincts. I forget the exact way the words are used, the way that it was described by the people who used it, but it's a form of helplessness that's caused by using empathy as a replacement for common sense, and then becoming victimized by basic things. Normally, it'd just be called a Darwin Award. Where am I? Normally, it'd be called a Darwin Award, where a person is too stupid to live. But that's not exactly what it is. These people are victimized by the fact that their kindness is being weaponized by people who intend to do bad things. And they are incapable of defending themselves from this problem that is created by that conflux of behavior and action. They don't have the ability to defend themselves from being victimized and taken advantage of by, say, an illegal. Because, oh my god, this man just wants to have the right to live and be a person. He just wants to have the ability to have a family. He just wants to have the ability to not be homeless on the street. Why are you not giving him the stuff to do that? And then that guy creates 5 more angel victims. Because that man was a convicted criminal who was supposed to be in jail. And because of this deadly amount of sympathy, they have now made a martyr and victim out of someone's son, out of someone's daughter, out of someone's husband, out of someone's wife. It is probably the most consistent thing that has brought it to people's attention, which is why I'm so annoyed that I can't remember the exact word that he used to describe it. But it's the most common thing that pretty much victimizes everybody. It's a collection of white narratism, it's a collection of sea lioning, and it's a collection of cultural rot, along with cultural Marxism. Because they are so stricken, my first perfect, they are so stricken to a position that must be because this person has been stolen of their power and of their opportunity, rather than it being an exact choice by a person. Because it must be these factors and nothing else, that and that alone is proof of how all people that find themselves in this position must actually be evil Nazi bigots that actually want people to die if they aren't willing to go along with this particular sheepish behavior too, because that's proof that they are actually soulless and thus heartless, and thus things that are happening don't deserve to happen, because what kind of a monster lets it happen? And when it does happen, it's because the person's a heartless monster and not because they're trying to look out for the worst case scenario. So recently in the news, a good example of this, there was a hoax perpetuated by the news where they attempted to say that a child was killed doing a prank. But actually, the kid was not doing a ding-dong ditch prank. What they were doing was they were kicking in people's houses at their front doors and walking into the building as a social media, social experiment reaction prank. And that kid got fucking hosed. Common sense would tell you don't do that. But unfortunately, just like with the girl who licked the ice cream, they do it for clout. And let's not even forget that one fucking, it was either British or Mexicans or Canadian citizen. My brain is telling me British citizen. Who was, what was his name? Mizzy? Something like that? Where he was doing that crime of kicking in people's houses, walking into their buildings and homes to terrorize them because he got 6 thrills out of it. And when he was confronted on Piers Morgan, he was like, I just love breaking into people's houses, breaking up the place. I just love breaking into people's houses, breaking up the place. I love the causing havoc I fear. It's just harmless fun. It's just a harmless prank. This is just harmless buckshot. This is just harmless dragon's breath. This is just a harmless, not less than lethal taser that I'm shooting directly into your balls. You'll be fine, kid. So, I'm going to say the weaponized stupidity of crippling sympathy. Something like that. If a better term comes up for it, we'll adopt that, but that's the word I'm going to call it. Crippling sympathy. Because it's the kind of thing that makes you win a Darwin Award.
Do good.
Now it's that compassion itself is bad, and that the people who are trying to make an argument for compassion are actually trying to trick you. A former professor of psychology named Timothy or something describes empathy as the camouflage of psychopaths.
The camouflage in which the narcissists and butchers that we're describing enmesh themselves is in the camouflage of empathy.
We should be fundamentally skeptical of empathy because it is largely used as a tool to get you to, I don't know, feel bad about slavery or something. Empathetic people are easier to take advantage of, you see.
It's clearly the case that people who are very high in trait empathy, so very high in agreeableness, they are easy to take advantage of.
It's just science. And women with our soft empathetic brains are especially susceptible.
Agreeableness is a maternal trait. And women are higher in agreeableness than men. That's cross-cultural.
It's not just that empathy itself bad. We need that for society. No, it's undifferentiated empathy that is the real problem. A thing that nobody is arguing for.
And so what you see, at least in part, is undifferentiated empathy. And that's not a virtue. It's not a virtue. You have to think. You can't just feel. You have to...
See, Timothy is equivocating the belief that all people are worthy of dignity, respect, and human rights as the same as saying that all people's feelings deserve equal weight at all times. Again, not an argument I've ever heard anybody make, but maybe just my soft...
It is frequently made. It is probably the most common example that historically was made during all of the riots during 2011, 2016, and then re-read its head again during the Summer of Love, where, famously, a person who was physically at a protest wasn't doing anything, but happened to be recording. And the leftists screeched, looking for reaction. to get some muscle. She's not talking to me. Where they would scream to get some muscle over here. And then, by the time people have realized that the person in question has been mistaken as somebody else, who is meant to be seen as an agitator, probably like a early sighting of Ian Mal's Chong or something like that, the person is still being harassed, is still being harassed and harangued by the leftists that are there, saying, well, people want you to go, so maybe you should just leave and acquiesce to what the group wants. Because that's the kind of mindset they believe in. They believe in that mindset, that they can use empathy and sympathy and how other people feel as a way to control you and your actions.
Soft, empathetic brain got duped.
Compassion is great for dealing with infants, and maybe it's great for dealing with hurt people and really elderly people. You know, it's good for taking care of people who can't take care of themselves, but it's not a great doctrine to be building a political system on.
Timothy, I think maybe we should do a little pause for a second. The right has latched onto this word empathy as a sort of catch-all term for progressives appealing to your fifis when people are mistreated, saying that empathy alone...
Empathy and sympathy, these two things go together. The empathy is the feelings that come with how you think, and the sympathy are the feelings that come with how you feel. Having empathy and trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and sympathy with considering how you would feel if you were put there, and the emotional response that triggers in your fucking nerves, from the sciatic to the pituitary, to your inner doctrine voice, the one that tells you to imagine an egg, and then to imagine what you would do with that egg, and if you would eat it on a brisk Sunday on Tuesday, with delicious, delicious breakfast food. All of these things are necessary in order to meet people halfway. It is what we are training children to do when we tell them to think of others and to share. It is also the very basics on embezzlement of entitlements that have been given to people through all of the democratic things, like, oh, I want to know, SNAP benefits, food stamps, TAFT, which is temporary help for needy families. All these things are based on the concept of helping the downtrodden. You know, social programs. Socialism? Communism, if you get down to brass tacks. Nah. Little Tim don't know what he's talking about, she said. So we just take a word for it. Yeah. Yak me with a spoon right now. Please, cut my eyes out of my head.
Is not a valid basis for public policy, when no one is saying that it is. To circle this back to parenthood,
But there are quite literally multiple people saying that it is. That is the entire reason behind why multiple people that are illegal immigrants are supposed to be given the ability to stay in the country despite the fact that they broke the law. And we discovered that they broke the law. And they outed themselves as breaking the law because they bragged about the fact that they were illegals. And then had been illegals for years. It has been constantly in the news, especially concerning ICE. There she goes again with that lying shit.
Validation of feelings is a keystone of modern parenting advice. But although validating feelings is key to gentle/authoritative parenting, so is holding boundaries. So let's say it's time to turn off the Super Kitty show because it's time to go to bed and a tantrum ensues. For the sake of argument, let's just be cold and results-oriented. We want the tantrum to stop by any means possible. But this is a firm boundary. The kitties have to go bye-bye. Now, I think a lot of us may have been raised in an environment where threats or yelling may have been employed to get you to shut up about the Super Kitties or the Ninja Turtles or whatever your thing was. But here's the thing. Think about when you're frustrated. Maybe you're at Disneyland and you paid the extra $28 to ride.
She's about to go on about how she's a Disney adult. I'm going to cut the mustard, and I'm going to tell you what it actually is she's trying to say. What Lindsay is attempting to argue about here is the dividend in the middle, and is one of the most common adult tactics for normal conversations. Realistically, what you want, if you want to give a child some type of lesson or thought, is that aggressive parenting is going to lead to developmental problems and rebellion, because you shouldn't use threats and fear to get your child to obey you. Because you shouldn't lie to your child. and you shouldn't spook or scare them, because it's unnecessary. However, there's a very big difference between the way that you use empathy to talk to a child and the way that a grown adult tells you, why won't you give money? Or do you not like black people? Why won't you help rebuild the inner city? Only to find out that your money is gone. Just like all the money that has ever been given to Africa. And how Africans view African time. Because the propensity of Dimidats is the exact same as Karen, about to talk about how much she loves being able to get people to do things for her. She's 80 on her vacations.
Ride Rise of the Resistance like a sucker, and you finally get to the front of the line, but oh no, the ride is down for the rest of the day. Adult tantrum ensues. If a cast member gets up in your face and tells you to get over it and get lost, and you need to shut up or you're going to get kicked out of the park, is that going to make you less angry? Is that going to make you stop? No, it's going to escalate the situation. Someone is going.
This is what we call the mad black woman syndrome, or the mad black syndrome. Very common and very often. Whenever you accuse somebody of something that they're not doing, you're going to create the emotion in them that they were not exhibiting. And if you wanted to be an evil enough person, you could then take the fact that you triggered this person to then get a group to respond the way that you want them to. So if what you want is you want to make me look like I'm the fool, accuse me of something that I'm not doing. Say that I'm salty. Say that I'm angry. Produce in me the emotional reactant. So that you can then say, look at this. This nigga's lost his composure. And then say, see, you don't have to do all that with that yelling and that shouting. Because what you want to do is you want to frame the action as negative. You want to frame the interaction as negative. You want to frame the way that is being reacted to as negative. Because if you frame it as negative, then it gives you control over the optics. Controlling the optics there then allows other people who are completely uninitiated, who will then pass over and say, well, what's going on in here? To want to know exactly what's happening. This is where Chaos Junkies can then start stirring the pot, and then trolls start acting like trolls. You don't want that. What you're trying to do is to understand where someone's coming from, and to understand what it is they're trying to communicate to you. Because you're not actually effectively communicating. You are doing something worse than effectively communicating. You are stoking the flames of antagonism and resentment. You do this often enough, you can make a person who is very centered and very level-headed appear to be belligerent, no matter how they describe their points. Because you can just take them out of context, interrupt them, cut the microphones, etc., etc., etc. Oh my god, look at that, Lindsay! We're describing rage bait tactics in debate behavior! Oh my god, how did that happen? How did that happen? How did that happen?
Going to be speaking to the manager. This is where the validation of feelings comes in. The quickest and most efficient way to get a toddler to stop throwing a tantrum is to validate their feelings and show that you understand. I know you like to watch the Super Kitties. I like trash too. Independence Day is still one of my favorite movies, and don't get me started on Showgirls.
What? You didn't want to say anything about... You didn't say anything about Light of the Last Dragon? Come on. What about your favorite knockoff of Atla? Huh? Ain't I a stinker?
We can watch TV tomorrow. It's time to go to bed. Please God, let it be Bluey. Hey! The key thing here is that while you are empathizing with the desire to continue watching trash, that doesn't mean your empathy for the child will lead you to break the boundary that you have already put in place. Just because you can find a common emotional ground with someone else's viewpoint doesn't mean you're going to bend the rules around it. And so this is fallacy number one. When progressives use language like empathy or something like it, it is not a call for you to blindly do whatever somebody else says because you know how they feel. It is a reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. Elon Musk is a frequent critic of...
Everybody deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. Therefore, if you don't do what we say is supposed to be the right and empathetic thing to do, we're going to punish you by telling you that you don't get to be a part of polite society anymore. The way that we decide you're allowed to be a part of polite society. Because we've decided to shame you for not doing enough.
Of the concept of empathy, unless that empathy is for taxpayers.
They really lack empathy for the average taxpayer who's working hard, paying taxes.
From responding with laughing.
Yes, we are aware, Lindsay. We've gotten to it and did it better than you did. We've made fun of him and Ramaswamy. You are very, very late to the conversation about H-1B visas. Also, very interesting how you have not said anything yet about H-1B visas. Please tell me the next section has something about H-1B visas. Otherwise, this empathy talk is about to get really bad for you. Because I know what I'm talking about.
emojis, two stories of the lives that he has ruined, up to arguing that the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy, in very unambiguous terms.
Suicidal empathy. Like, if there's like, there's so
That's what it was. Suicidal empathy. Thanks, Elon. Now give me my Elon bucks.
much empathy that you actually suicide yourself.
Yeah.
So that we've got civilizational suicidal empathy going on.
But this is just the secular argument. Bafflingly, at least here in the United States, the most common argument against empathy is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Empathy almost needs to be struck from the Christian vocabulary. It does. Empathy is dangerous. Empathy is toxic. Empathy will align you with hell. Absolutely.
Most people have a hard time imagining how empathy could ever be harmful. And therefore, if I'm the devil, where am I going to hide some of my most destructive tactics?
On February 13th of this year, David French wrote an op-ed in the New York Times titled, "Behold, the strange spectacle of Christians against empathy." In it, he wrote, "The Republican Christian right made a hard turn against immigration and, in its most extreme political faction, is turning against empathy itself. People are looking for a moral frame around which they can fit the Trump movement, and decrying empathy helps them do that." French, a Christian himself, is a former free speech litigator and the author of books like A Season for Justice, defending the rights of the Christian home church and school. And he spends like half this article crowing about how he had all these court triumphs for religious freedom in the early 2000s, but now fascists are building on the groundwork that he himself helped lay, and it's like, oh no, how could this happen?
Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window!
Come on, whoever did this, just confess. We promise we won't be mad.
Whatever, David. I'm glad you're here now. Welcome to the Resistance.
You see, that's the reason why you're never going to have class solidarity. Oh no, the tactics of the left-wing propaganda is now being used against you. Oh my god, that's so crazy. That's so... oh my god, oh no! Person's life, whose life is in shambles. Why are you mocking me while everything's burning? Well, see, now you're on our side. Now you can see what we were talking about. Are you done being stubborn? Now do you get it? Now do you get it? White men, where are you going? White men, please come back. We need your votes. What was that? We lost because the white men voted this way. It must have been the black men. You know, they're the white men. What was that? The black men voted down ballot with the black women, as has the black diaspora seem to be marrying black women in larger numbers than all of these mutts that are supposedly race traitors, like the African American who's speaking right now. Was that? It also said that they are doing so as a part of the promise that they were given about the entitlements and the systems put in place by the Democrats? Huh. Looks like you can't blame the blacks for this one, so I guess we just have to blame the browns. How do we want to phrase it? How do we want to find it? I know! The Sing! With poo hands! With disgusting poo hands! It's the Sing! Posing as right-wing influencers, despite the fact that India is not the superpower we've been told it is. It is in fact a shithole, as most his shitholes are. That's why they're leaving there to come here, to make them more like a shithole. What's Indian time in leftist speak? What is it called, Lindsay?
You see, when progressives say things like, you know, we should stop funding the murder of children or throwing immigrants into concentration camps is bad, they are not sincere. They are trying to manipulate good, soft-hearted Christians into supporting causes that they deep down know are sinful. Because Democrats need the Gazans and the immigrants to do secret votes, to steal votes. Look, I didn't say it made sense.
So in New York State, illegal aliens can already vote in state and city elections. A lot of people don't know that. I mean, they're trying to fight that, they're trying to stop that, but currently I think it's like 600,000 are registered to vote, illegal aliens, in New York.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Stupid babies need the most attention.
You see a lot of people trying to find a biblical framework to support this. Here is Cincinnati suburb native Jonathan Vance invoking Ordo Amoris, a medieval Catholic theological concept which is not in the Bible, but that establishes a hierarchy of duties prioritizing immediate obligations to one's family or community over distant needs.
But there's this old school...
Before civil duty comes personal responsibility. First myself, then my house, then those in it that make it a home, then my community, then my distant parish, and then everyone living in my county, well, first city, county, state, country, and world. You care more about an alien rock than you do about people who are across the fucking shoulder because you think that because they vote differently, they're fucking Nazis.
And I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world.
He got his face kicked in over this by not one but two popes, which is not relevant to this discussion, but it is.
Face kicked in, otherwise known as they made a call for the removal of Borders' estate. And I know this intrinsically because it became a serious point of contention where I listened to a person unironically tell me, actually, it's my right to harass people about my religion. Because, you see, as a member of the unorthodox church, I deserve the right to shit on somebody else for their fucking political opinions. It was unironically so serious that this person knew it, that while we were taking my mother to go get her fucking eye surgery, he needed to explicitly say, "Are you ignoring me because you sided with that fucking dirty, non-Jewish person?" There's a lot of lore behind the anger here, chat. There's a lot of lore behind the anger here. It's very, very irritating. No, Pip, you're not going to guess who it is, and I'm not telling you. It's not important for you to know. The people who know, who will be watching this later, know who they are. A wink. More importantly, the exact words, when written from what they came from, was a reading directly from information given on the day of Jubilee. And it was an explicit call for the removal of borders. The entire discussion about the situation from the person in question was the exact point behind the idea of the parish and the parable that I spoke about in the Jordan Peterson Surrounded event, about knowing them by the toxic fruits of their words and actions. Because you cannot make calls for movement like this and it not be taken as an abdication of the office of the Pope. Because the seat of power is infallible, but man is not. And just as much as man is not without mistake, unlike that which he builds with his hands, the idea that you shall know the false prophets by their fruits and by their actions and their words goes hand in hand with all this bullshit you're trying to put onto the right wing. As much as you can blame Ben, and as much as you can blame Vance, and as much as you can blame Peterson, and as much as you can blame fucking Elon, unfortunately, Lindsay, you are currently carrying water and being a handmaiden to the exact kind of manipulations that lead people to talk about why you are not just wrong here, but fucking lying. That quick lie that you tried to do, as you then transitioned away from what you started with, which was early childhood development, and how Ben Shapiro thinks that he can do Blue's Clues better than Blue's Clues, has now pivoted into, we don't do that. Even though literally all of our arguments are based on telling you that that thing never happens, and then we try to censor you when that thing happens again and you rub it in our face, the way that we've been rubbing it in other people's face. Dark MAGA never happened. And also, Dark Woke never happened as a response either. Cherish the thought. We never went harder and harassed you like that when we had power. We were graceful. We were graceful as we made jokes about you, and made comments about you, and antagonized you, and terrorized you, and told you to trust the science, crush the curve, something, take this unauthorized shot that we have told you is safe, that actually wasn't safe, or you're a bigot. And then, we need amnesty for how we acted over COVID. We weren't ourselves. Something, the left always accuses you something. That's right, Foster. You get a cookie. It has chocolate chips.
Is very funny. David French points out the Christian nationalist belief that women are uniquely vulnerable to manipulation.
So you do have quite a bit of literature in the far right, the Christian nationalist right, that is decrying what they see as a, quote, feminized church. They say that America is a gynocracy, is what they will call it, and that empathy element is a part of their argument.
Allie Beth Stuckey, a former contributor to The Blaze and Prager University, recently published a book called Toxic Empathy, How Progressives Exploit Christian Compassion. Like Timothy, she believes that women's soft brains make them vulnerable to exploitation, and this is why women...
Because it is. Women feel empathy a lot. Sometimes it can be to their detriment, which is why usually the joke goes that woman sees nice, cute thing, and man has to protect her from the dangers of the nice, cute thing. Why is this so upsetting to you, Lindsay?
As a voting bloc cannot be trusted.
It is a tool used by progressives to emotionally manipulate women into taking the left-wing position on something.
Allie Beth's big thing is decrying empathy when used in the defense of things like reproductive rights and immigrants and trans people.
They'll use emotional, compassionate, kind-sounding language in order to get a woman to think, well, in order to be a good person, in order to be kind, in order to even love my neighbor, then I have to be pro-open borders, I have to be pro-LGBTQ, I have to be pro-choice.
So you might think you're being a good Christian by loving and accepting people as they are, but it's actually not loving because you are enabling their delusion.
That love always rejoices.
There is a difference. Oh my god. Every single time with bad fucking faith. There is a difference. The clear difference is when a person is being told, if you don't do this thing, then you're as bad as these evil people that I'm lumping you in with. And I know that you are trying to do good, but you probably aren't seeing the many ways in which you could do better. And let me help you try to find some of those ways. It is different. It has always been and always will be different. Desperately trying to make everybody sound like they're evil fucking bigot Nazi monsters isn't going to help you unconvince people from the position of, you know, I would like you to ask rather than force me. Because you're forcing people's hands. The insistence that I have to do compelled speech and use your pronouns, otherwise I'm hurting you. That I can never mention your, quote, dead name, otherwise I am hurting you. Despite the fact that it might be necessary for documentation or anything else a person would need to have to use somebody's legally given name before they change to another legally given name would be important for. That flex of that 99% shit again.
Is in the truth, which means that I cannot love my gender-confused neighbor by calling him she.
Gender-affirming care is not love. You're harming them. I don't care what the science says. Do I look like I believe in science?
Like, we actually start with the gut-wrenching, heartstring-pulling story from...
Stuck in place. So, basically, in this place of what she's trying to mock on here, imagine that comic of... It's not Shinsen again. Stone Toss. Where the person is about to take a scissor to give themselves the snip, and the person says, don't do it! And then they snip it, and then they start panicking about the damage they just did to themselves permanently in the attempt to affirm their gender. And the person then says, why'd you make them feel bad about it? That is the argument that the left has against detransitioners. They exist, but we don't talk about them. Ryan Barnes, we don't talk about that person, even though they have now changed their handle online from the multiple names they've gone through to eventually now just K-Shippa. Milo Stewart, Ship Shaloop, Maloop, it's Milo. That person, we don't talk about them. That's one of those people that we, quote, solved the book on from years ago. That's so long ago, despite the fact that they now have a deep voice that they can never get the tone back for. Because they realize, actually, it isn't what I thought it was. How about Jazz Jennings? How about the living example almost all of us were forced to learn about because of MTV? Yeah, we don't talk about that one either, do we? My experience!
On the left, and then we back up and we say, but who is the real victim here?
But like, they actually have it backwards. They're not the real victims. What about the real victims? What about the fetus at 8 weeks? Their feelings actually are more important than the ambulatory incubator carrying them. And deporting immigrants is Christian love, actually, because won't someone think of the victims of violent immigrant crime? You know, all that violent immigrant crime we have.
I want to shift people's perspective of who the victim is in these issues from who the media tells us the victim is to the...
Not just lying about statistics, but explicitly browbeating people in the tongue-in-cheek fashion. More tricks that you learn from your bread tube friends.
Actual victim.
And I'm not clear on how deporting asylum seekers to their home countries is Christian love, actually. She doesn't address how it's Christian love to just revoke asylum seekers' legal status for no reason, or how it's love to starve children in Gaza.
They don't have a legal status as citizens. They have a status as migrants. They are attempting to then overstay what is meant to be the purposes of escaping a place and not trying to become a part of the culture of the place that they effectively are trying to move into. They are not given permanent vacation status. They have to actually assimilate into the culture. If they don't assimilate into the culture, that is a problem. One that we can address. We, in fact, do get to have the right to say when too much is too much. And I think watching more than enough people do this to us frequently is the case for it being too much and enough. Your health is just not going down.
Hit me up, Allie Beth, if you would like to explain to me how turning a blind eye to dead and dying children is Christian love, actually. Who is this baby's real victim, Allie Beth? I must know. Can't wait to see your mental backbends platformed by the New York Times. Here is Pastor Ben Garrett tweeting in response to another minister imploring Trump to show mercy during the inauguration.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country. We're scared now.
Do not commit the sin of empathy.
What was that? The female preacher who chose to make a political grandstand moment in a church during a official ceremony in which both the president and vice president and their families were in attendance. Political proselytizing! No, you see. Quirky Chungus says, actually, this is normal and fine, and if you have a problem with this, actually, you're the judge. Something, give me money on Nebula, something.
This snake is God's enemy and yours, too. She hates God and his people. You need to properly hate in response. She is not merely deceived, but is a deceiver. Your eyes shall not pity. Here is Minister Joel Webon tweeting, Christians must recover the lost virtue of hatred. If not, Christianity will survive, but the West will be finished.
Are we the baddies?
I think to anyone with even a cursory knowledge of Jesus' teachings, the gospel of toxic empathy might appear somewhat at odds with them. Russell Moore was once one of the top officials in the Southern Baptist Convention. When he criticized Trump, the church's response to a sexual abuse scandal, and what he saw as an increased tolerance for white nationalism, he found himself ostracized by many other evangelical leaders and eventually left his position.
Well, it was the result of having multiple pastors tell me essentially the same story about quoting the Sermon on the Mount parenthetically in their preaching. Turn the other cheek. To have someone come up after and say, where did you get those liberal talking points? In most of these scenarios, when the pastor would say, I'm literally quoting Jesus Christ, the response would not be, I apologize. The response would be, yes, but that doesn't work anymore. That's weak.
In isolation, the idea that children, at least, should be protected because children should be guaranteed fundamental human rights isn't really a position that you can argue against. You know, unless you're a shark-eyed psycho like Congressman Randy Fine, who just a few days ago tweeted, release the hostages. Until then, starve away. Randy.
Randy, the babies aren't holding anybody hostages. They're
And just like that, she jumped onto the baby settler theme. Thanks, Hassan.
babies. They're babies, Randy, and they're starving. Randy.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry, maybe it's not real. Damn, hey, I was getting good. So we have to frame it like appeals to humanity are actually attempts at manipulation. But perhaps the most insidious rebuttal isn't that appeals to humanity are in bad faith, but are anti-Semitic. You know what? I'm gonna need everybody to sit down for a sec. Hold on. Okay, time to chill the beans. Are we all zen? Are we all spa? Are we relaxed? Okay, let's get this over with. I think it's fair to say that for the most part, the Gentiles never really learned how to talk about anti-Semitism in good faith. But despite that, lately...
You're not a religious person. Shut the fuck up about that.
It seems like even the people who should, you know, in theory probably know better are keen to just, I don't know, kind of go along with it. Some people even going so far as to downplay or even deny the reality of anti-Semitism in the world just because some people in power are misattributing the word. And there are some people who, you know, I want to believe are acting in good faith who don't seem to have any problem hopping into bed with some actual f***ing fools. Some people, not you.
Use some names. Use some names or stop being a pussy about it.
Never you. You're too smart for that. So as leftoid femoids, you know, when we advocate for the liberation of all people, you know, that does mean
Now she's doing the immune cat thing.
Everybody, you know, unless you're a total hypocrite. You know, which you would never. You're too smart for that. Anyway, it is now time for the requisite history segment. You know, sorry, it is what it is. At the video essay, I gotta do it or they'll revoke my license. Come on. Okay, so now we're all relaxed, got our heat treatment, got our pores opened, and we'll try to make this whole history portion short and sweet. Here we go. So King Solomon the Wise. Don't look at me like that. I could have started way earlier. I could have started with Moses. We could have started with the fall of man. King Solomon the Wise is said to have constructed the first temple in Jerusalem. This is likely legendary rather than historical, but that puts its construction around here-ish. Judaism was originally a temple-based religion. I mean, it still is, but now it's more about like study than doing rituals at a physical place. Back in the day, the temple was a much bigger deal. It was the center of worship, it was where they housed the Ark of the Covenant, those plates with the 15,
These 15! Wait. 10 commandments!
It's where they sacrificed the lambs. It was a big deal. And then, oh no, it's Babylon. They invade Judea, destroy the first temple, and this leads the political and religious leaders to either being dispersed, killed, or enslaved. And this is called the Babylonian exile, and it lasts a few decades. But then, here comes the Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded by King Cyrus the Great. Oh boy, they defeat the Babylonians and let the Judean ruling class go home. Hooray. Around this time is when the people of the region start calling themselves Jews. So the Achaemenid Empire allows the Jewish higher-ups to rebuild Judea, and they get to rebuild a temple. A new temple. A better temple. A new and sexy better temple. Foreshadowing is a literary after Alexander the Great comes in and conquers the Achaemenids with like 50 guys.
You
conquered the Achaemenids. What, like it's hard?
The Greeks ruled for a couple hundred years, there were a few regime changes, they even had like 30 years of Jewish control, and then the Romans took over. And that's not great. And around this time is when that Jesus boy showed up.
I want to party with you, Jesus.
Rock me, sexy Jesus, he died for our sins.
Anyway, Jesus does his ministry for a little while, gathers a following, does a little temple sermon, and he gets crucified. And this is believed to have happened around the year 30 CE. So things were already pretty tense between the Jews and their evil Roman conquerors, and everything came to a head in 70 CE with the Roman-Jewish War and the sacking of Jerusalem. The Romans besieged the city for months. According to Jewish historian Josephus in his work The Jewish War, written around 75 CE, the Romans, finding the resistance over, spared no one. They were enraged by the rebellion and slaughtered all they met. The streets ran with blood and the whole city was covered with bodies. The number of those who perished during the whole siege was over 1 million, the majority of them Jewish by birth. Modern historians think that Josephus was overstating it, a bit. Deaths were more in the neighborhood of like 20 to 30,000. But the most crucial outcome here is the destruction of that temple and the beginning.
I'm not speaking not because I don't have anything to say, but because she literally put this in here so that she could try to have space between the radical political takes and the shitting on people by proxy or somehow explicitly calling out to them and making it seem tongue-in-cheek and purposeful. Look at these people getting angry about those words that I said a few minutes ago. Aren't they silly? Now, more about those words that I said a few minutes ago that are actually very important and they were radical so that I can now cover what I was saying. It's very boring. It's very dull. It's simple that we just allow it to run its course.
Beginning of the Jewish diaspora. There was another revolt between 132 and 135 CE, and this led to even harsher Roman crackdowns, and Jews are banned from Jerusalem. Of course, not every Jew left the region, but this is the start of the Jewish diaspora in earnest. So where do the Muslims come into all this? Well, they start popping up about 500 years later, and I know I'm being super simplistic, again, trying to keep this short. Prophet Muhammad begins preaching Islam in Mecca around the year 610 CE. In 622, he and his followers go to Medina, where he becomes a political and military leader, as well as a religious one, and over the next decade or so, Muhammad unites the Arabian Peninsula through a combination of diplomacy, alliances, and shrewd military strategy. By the time of his death, around 632 CE, much of the Arabian Peninsula had accepted Islam and was united. Within 10 years, Muhammad's followers conquer Syria, Palestine, Iran, Iraq, and Egypt. They managed to do all of this in part because the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Persian Empire had just finished a big war between themselves, and they were tired and they just didn't have the energy, mood. Another thing that made the conquest go quickly was that many of the local populations discontent with Byzantine or Sassanid rule actually welcomed their new Muslim overlords, and many were happy to convert. Those that did not want to convert were usually allowed to maintain their religions. This strategy stands in contrast to conquering hordes like the Mongols, who were not able to keep hold of their conquests because they just ran slipshod through Asia and Europe, killing everybody. It's easy to maintain your conquests if you aren't having to deal with constant uprisings because your conquests despise you. Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians are in the Quran considered people of the book. Basically, we might have some theological disagreements, but we're cousins. Any reference to Jewish people in the Quran outside of citing religious texts or figures like Abraham and Moses, who are considered prophets in Islam, is mostly about like this group or another doing a scripture wrong or breaking some covenant or something, but there is nothing that could be reasonably construed as condemnation. The Quran calls for dialogue with Jews and Christians, emphasizing shared belief in one God.
It also calls for death to the sword to use whatever means possible. Convert them by the word and convert them by the sword. This is where the more fundamentalists end up becoming the individuals who are responsible for putting us at the virtue of the bullshit that holds us victims to never-ending concepts and never-ending quarrels, which then become the breakdown of even further militant groups, which is how you get not just the Sunni and Shiite religions of Muslims, but also the Wahhabism, and then even more radicals amongst those militants, and why there's a difference between Muslimism and Islam. A Islamist and a moderate. An Islamist and your friend down at the pita shop. Thank you, Absolute Zero Kyoku. Go back to work. Free yourself. Free yourself. Run! Run, don't walk! Run, don't walk away from Lindsay Ellis. It's the best thing.
Say, O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you, that we worship none but God. So it would be dishonest to imply that in 2,000 years of history, generations upon generations, that there were never periods of oppression when one group of people had dominance over another. It was not always puppies and bagels for the Jews under Muslim rule. In Muslim Spain, for example, although during the initial caliphates between the 8th and 11th century things were generally pretty chill, where the Jews even held high-ranking positions in government, in the Almoravid and Almohad caliphates of the 11th through 13th century, religious tolerance declined. But for the most part, there has been a steady Jewish population under Muslim rule in the Middle East and North Africa for the last 2,000 years. And while there have been periods of oppression, the levels of oppression experienced by these populations were quaint compared to the rest of Europe.
We have a mission to convert the Jews.
All of this is a very long-winded way of arriving at the point that there is no historic blood feud between Jews and Muslims. This idea that Jews and Muslims are intrinsically at odds with each other, and that's just the way things have always been.
It's false. It never happened. It's fake. It's fiction. It's an urban legend. It never happened. Pure fiction.
It's a very modern invention. It's not true.
We made it up.
Historically, it's been Christians beefing with Jews and or Muslims, not Jews and Muslims beefing with each other. So why, if the Muslims weren't so bad to the Jews, was there a Jewish diaspora in the first place? Well, because the diaspora had started nearly 600 years earlier. I feel like to the Western mindset, everything between the death of Christ and the Norman invasion is just kind of this mush where progress stalled and, nothing much happened. But 600 years is a long time. 600 years ago from right now was before the non-Viking Europeans had even oopsed their way into the Americas. And again, not all Jews had left the Middle East. Some groups had been there the whole time, but by the time the Muslims came along, huge Jewish populations had already been scattered to the four winds. Ah yes, but there was one more sect of Judaism we almost forgot. One that, after the destruction of the Second Temple, looked at their fellow Jews very swiftly and said, I don't know her.
The word is Christians, thus bringing us to the three-faction movement of what is meant to be known as the Abrahamic religions of Judeo-Christianity. This is about to be where she's about to start bashing on Christians. If you are a Christian, you're going to want to take your Christian block and bite down on it now.
So, when the fall of man happened, I changed my mind. We actually are going back to the fall of man. So, fall of Adam, fall of man. And, oh no, sin is in the world. We cannot be unsinned because, that is our nature now. But wait, God has a plan. He hatched a plan as Adam and Eve pieced out of the garden. Or it was predetermined depending on which denomination you're in. This idea of sacrifice was really big in the ancient world, usually animals, and in the case of Judea, usually lambs. Every day, the priests would sacrifice lambs at the temple. Even during the Roman siege of 70 AD, they did it. Every day until the temple fell. This idea of a sacrificial lamb is a whole thing, and it has many ritual functions, one of which is the atonement of sin. And God's like, okay, if sacrifices equals atonement, and we have a lot to atone for because, my God, myself. Well, all right, I already did that flood, and I promised I wouldn't do that again. So we need, the mother of all sacrifices. What if... Get this. I get sacrificed. Now hear me out. I get born as a man, but I'm also my son. I'm my own grandpa. And then I/he get sacrificed. There's so much sin in the world that it would take that level of sacrifice to wipe away all this sin because, whoop. Y'all need Jesus. That is why the scene of the Pharisees trying to get Jesus killed is the way that it is. The people of Jerusalem turning on him after having just welcomed him into the city, Peter denying him 3 times, Judas betraying him, the crowd freeing the murderer instead of the savior when given the choice. Look at how terrible you people are. You do not deserve this sweet cinnamon roll of a man. And despite all that sin, I will be born as a human, do a little bit of ministry for a minute, and then I'll get sacrificed in the worst way possible. And it's gonna suck ass, and I'm gonna hate it. But in doing this, the ultimate sacrifice, I'm going to null and void all this sin we got flying around. Voila, humanity is saved. That's what Christians mean when they say Jesus loves you, at least when they're not being super condescending about it. It's this idea that...
Projection? Super copacetic.
These people were so horrible and so full of sin, but he loved them all so much that he went through this, the ultimate sacrifice, absolving them of the ultimate sin, killing him. So Jesus is the Lamb of God and the ultimate sacrifice, and that's what we mean when we say Jesus died for your sins. This is the foundation of Christian belief. All denominations have this in common. But that leaves a huge theological question. If the ultimate sacrifice means all sin is forgiven, does that mean everybody? Well, here we have one of the many theological splits. Universal salvation is the belief that Christ's sacrifice is a complete and total victory over evil. Everyone is saved, there is no hell. There are a ton of verses in the New Testament that support this interpretation. It is also...
Oh my Lord, have mercy, oh Christ almighty, this woman is so fucking autistic. Okay. I'm going to shortcut here, and I'm going to get to the brass tacks. So, the general idea of the Christian or Christianity, majority of the baseline denominations that usually include most of religion goes like this. The original sin required Jesus to die for you on the cross. But the collective sin throughout your life requires you to actively repent for it. You need to confess. You have to be willing to take the Eucharist. You have to be a part of a parish. You must do all the necessary functions to be a member of a functioning parish, so that you can then properly be able to ratify for your sins. That is it. It's as simple as that. How your denomination then does it is where all the denomination splits then happen. Between the Protestants and the blah 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 blah. I don't know why she's choosing to explain it this autistic way, where she wants to make this as the one defining way that people do it. Probably because she wants to attack, I don't know, Southern Christians. Because I know Southern Christianity is a lot different than most forms of Christianity. But oh my god. Oh my god, she's so fucking unbearable.
So the minority interpretation in the United States. Special salvation is the belief that only believers are saved. This is supported through John 3:16, a verse that is most famous for being repurposed by professional wrestlers.
Talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. In this interpretation, the prerequisite for eternal life is belief. Although note that this verse, which is the best evidence for the interpretation of special salvation, doesn't say that only believers get eternal life, but, that is beside the point. This interpretation of believers only is the most common in the United States today, which leads us to...
What you have done will be the saving of Israel. You'll be remembered forever for this.
90s kids will remember that alongside the rise of popularity of shows like Jerry Springer came the rise of an even more vacuous property, a series of novels starting with 1995's Left Behind, written by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. The novel/film begins with a bunch of people suddenly disappearing around the world, leaving behind their clothes, wedding rings, and chaos. Rayford Steele, played by Nicolas Cage, loses his wife and son in the rapture, and he teams up with a journalist, a pastor, a college student, and a rabbi to form Tribulation Force, a small group that tries to resist the rise of the Antichrist, UN Secretary General or something, Nikolai Carpathia. As Tribulation Force fights to resist the one world government and religion, which is a bad thing, they also seek to spread the truth and survive during the 7-year tribulation. Say what you want about these clowns, Nikolai Carpathia is a great villain name, 10 out of 10. Good job, young Earth creationists.
I have big plans for you, Buck. That story you sent to GNN about stone-gone calls from should be airing right at this very moment.
The Left Behind series sold over 80 million copies and helped popularize pre-tribulational premillennialism. It's actually not as complicated as it sounds. Now, dispensations are just a fancy word that describes biblical epochs in which God reveals himself in some different way. Dispensations were not really a big part of Christian theology until the late 1800s, when they were popularized by a guy named John Nelson Darby. He influenced people like William Eugene Blackstone to adopt a uniquely American take on Christian Zionism and petition the United States to aid in the return of all Jewish people to the Holy Land.
There's the Z word. It's about to get a lot more annoying quickly, Balster.
Blackstone believed that history was divided into these biblical time periods, or dispensations, and each dispensation is an era in which God defines himself in some new way, helpfully illustrated by this 1874 chart called Rightly Dividing the World of Truth. First dispensation is the Garden of Eden, second is, antediluvian, third is post-diluvian up to Abraham, fourth is the patriarchal, Abraham up to Moses, fifth is basically everything after Exodus up to the coming of Jesus, and here we are now in the sixth dispensation, the post-Christ dispensation, and this is the final dispensation before... Christianity was originally founded as an apocalyptic cult. The world is going to end soon. Any minute now. Any minute now. It's coming. Okay, here it comes. It is coming. Okay, Rome has fallen. Okay, it's definitely coming now. All right, Crusades. It's coming. Okay, all right, plagues. All right, so, okay, no. So, Reformation. All right, okay, no, World War, no. Okay, yes, now. No, well, don't you worry, guys. Apocalypse is coming. Any minute now. The world's gonna end. Literally every decade of every century has had its resident Christians insisting that the second coming is just around the corner, and according to the book of Revelation, when we get to the second coming, that's going to lead us to 1,000 years of Jesus in charge, and that's gonna kick ass. This is where the millennial part comes in. So when we say premillennial, that means that they believe that the second coming will be before the 1,000 years of kick-ass awesomeness, and will be marked by the rapture, followed by the tribulation. This is the period before that millennium of, well, tribulation. All the good Christians get raptured, just poof, gone, and everyone else gets left behind.
The 144,000 are a few select people chosen by God that will be spared from the end-time events.
So to recap, premillennial, they just think that Jesus will return before the 1,000 years of glory. Pre-tribulational, but not before that 7-year-ish tribulation. Dispensationalism, they believe in biblical dispensations, aka time periods, and that we are in the last one. The support for all of this in the Bible is basically non-existent. Here are the main examples that are usually cited as evidence for the rapture, and as you can see, it's a bit of a stretch. The rapture appeals to American evangelicals because it taps into this, survivalist frontier spirit. It also tells them that they're special, that there will be a chosen few, and that they will be among them. Or, if for some reason they don't make the cut, like Nicolas Cage, they can be doomsday preppers. They only have to make it 7 years of tribulation, and then millennium. Fun! Natural disasters are blamed on prophecy, sin, or, of course, evidence that the world is about to end.
We're going to see a complete change in the earth, and that what we call the travail of creation, or the travail of the earth, will cease when the Messiah returns.
They also believe that the low Earth atmosphere is the abode of Satan. This is why they don't care about climate change. Well, part of why. If the world is doomed anyway, why bother being a responsible steward of the environment? Satan's up there. So what does all this have to do with Christian Zionism? Well, in Genesis, God made a covenant with Abraham that the promised land will forever belong to his descendants. But ever since the Babylonian exile, with very brief periods of exception, the Jews have not been in charge of the promised land. And ever since the Second Temple was destroyed, a huge chunk of the Jewish population had spread throughout the world. So the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis is reframed by some Christians, and some Jews, we'll get to them, like a prophecy to be fulfilled. And in order for that to happen, a regathering of Jews in the land of Israel is necessary.
The Jews would be scattered from this land to the ends of the earth, and then regathered back into this land after many years of persecution. And it would all happen during what the Bible calls the last days.
Premillennial dispensationalism was popularized in the late 1800s and was a big thing in the South for a large part of the 20th century, but oh boy, here comes the formation of the modern state of Israel in 1948. Abrahamic covenant about to be fulfilled. This regathering of the Jews in the Holy Land is identified by premillennial dispensationalists as a sign of the end times. Any minute now. Apocalypse is coming.
Chapter 38 predicts 5 nations who will attack the reborn state of Israel in the future. This is a huge battle predicted to happen after the Jews have returned to this land, which means it could happen any day now. Then the Bible says God is going to cause Russia's weapons to misfire and explode on themselves. This will create confusion among these 5 nations to the point that they start attacking themselves instead of Israel.
Some of you are probably wondering where I get my news from, and that's actually a great question. This is why I rely on my partners over at Ground News.
The most fervent supporters
I'm certain the only reason she took that was to be absurdist and then make a joke about people using Ground News. Which is weird because both leftists and rightists use Ground News. Jokes actually have to have a punchline, Lindsay?
of the state of Israel in America are not the Jews, who tend to hold a very wide spectrum of opinions and beliefs on the state of Israel, but evangelical Christians, who support Israel and reject the Jewish diaspora because they believe that all of the Jews need to be back in the homeland so we can have the second coming and I can get sucked back up into Christ's loving arms.
The evangelicals are more excited about that than Jewish people. It's really, right? It's incredible.
Yeah. Weird. I don't mean to imply that rapture theory is the only reason that tens of millions of Americans support the state of Israel. You know, we gotta give Islamophobia its due credit. But it is arguably the largest core component. But American...
So, people are for this because they hate Islam. So, we now revive ourselves again at the position of Hassan Pikers with 99.99999999999 as you think Robin. So, any person who doesn't immediately join up for the cause are bigot monsters that hate people and want to see them die. If you don't give money to Palestine, for context, for the people who are playing the home game of Single Player Carl, there is a fundraiser that is attached to her video that has currently raised it obviously can't be the only one, but it's a donation for the PCRF, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. Perhaps maybe it is all the money that was created specifically by Lindsay, because she does in fact have that large of an audience. But I'm gonna round up a few $1,000s and say nearly $700,000 raised for the PCRF. So, if you don't give freely to Palestine while also hating those dirty, dirty Zionists and the Sabras and the molcajetes that salsa is being served inside of, you hate them the same way you must hate black people if you don't support Single Player Carl or African Americans in general. Before you ask, no, we're not even halfway in the video. There's still over an hour of this left.
evangelicals aren't the only crazies with shaky religious doctrine bolstering their horrible politics. Rapture doctrine also dovetails with the political aims, if not necessarily the religious beliefs, of certain sects of Judaism who ascribe to religious Zionism. Not all Zionist Jews are Zionists for religious reasons, and not all religious Jews are Zionists. There are some rabbis who argue that political Zionism runs in contradiction of God's will.
According to the very basics of Judaism, there's a concept of Jewish exile, which is a divine decree, which we are forbidden.
That is correct. Mind you, as the rabbi is currently explaining here, it is almost always a form of political exclusionary tactics. It's possible for you to, of course, arrive at the position that you want to see Palestine be freed from its oppressors and also believe in a two-state solution. But this is firmly the position of Lindsay Ellis and the people that she's echoing the arguments, the argumentation, the tactics, the chutzpah, and the cinnamon of, that there can only be a one-state solution. That it must be Palestine being free from the river to the sea, and Israel does not have a right to exist because they are, quote, oppressors. Something, 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 Netanyahu, something, 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 look at them doing the murdering thing. Something, 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 what about the PLO?
To end by any physical means.
But obviously there are a very great many Jewish people that do not adhere to this belief. Religious Zionists. Their basic argument is that we can do what we want. The Bible says so.
The Bible says this place was given to the Jews. This area is called Judea. The meaning of Judea is it's belong to the Jews.
Where's the nearest Palestinian town? I'm so uncomfortable using the word Palestinian because I don't think that it exists. You don't think they really exist?
There is never a place in history ever referred to as Palestine. The people who call themselves Palestinians are individuals who have adopted the word in the formulation of describing themselves as a part of a thing that they are clearly meant to frame as and be as a thing towards. The same way that you could say that a person has never been a part of Columbus, Georgia, it would be false, since Columbus and Georgia is a place that has existed. It was documented, it was written, it was made by charters. Nowhere inside of the British Mandate that formulated the regions originally given to the Jewish citizens of the region, and those that would now call themselves Palestinians in the region, ever defined that area as Palestine. Never happened. It never existed. They made it up. It's just been adapted into what it's become. Because, as you would know, in the history of the Fertile Crescent, which is the actual name of the area in which we're now describing, that exists inside of Africa, you would know that that specific region is the famous place where the constant 5v1s, 4v1s, 3v1s, 4v1s, 3v1s, 2v1s, and 4v1s were done where Israel was whipping some Israelis up and down the Fertile Crescent to defend themselves, despite never having the intention of holding land because they won. But naturally growing the resources despite having less land when they started with the mandate to where they are now, where it's just the Gaza Strip, which could have been developed into a port that is instead constantly bombing them, thus necessitating the need of the Iron Dome. As the kids say, bombs over Baghdad!
I don't think that they exist as a real nation with a real claim to this land.
What are they then?
They're Arabs.
With a connection to this land?
Yes, they have a connection to it. It's nowhere near the depth.
It is the same depth. It is the same concern. They all have a claim to the land. It is all their historic nation. What they don't have a claim to is to murder other people for it freely and then demand that America give them the gimme that. We shouldn't be on the hook to pay for Israel. But we have to pay for Israel as a NATO partner because someone won't stop bombing them. Because again, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Meaning from the River Jordan all the way to the Red Sea. Meaning that place, that is Israel, should be glassed. Because as we all know, it is the time-honored tradition of the Muslim to destroy relics that belong to the region, because there will be no other face before God, as his name is Allah. It is the reason why many of those artifacts are still saved in British museums. But what do I know? I'm just a fucking black guy.
And, I mean, we were in this land planting vineyards before Muhammad was in the 3rd grade.
The history said it belonged to Israel.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And to be clear, Scripture is not commanding anyone to do this. The support for all of this in Scripture, both Christian and Jewish, is flimsy and controversial within their respective religious communities. This is not religion brainwashing people. These are political actions that the people in power wanted to do anyway, and when any kind of qualm pops up, don't worry, it's fine. Actually, our Holy Scripture says we're commanded to do this thing, which, yeah, on the surface seems opposed to our belief system, but actually, it isn't. This is why American evangelicals can support Trump despite his obvious a-religiosity and cartoonish amorality. This is just God putting an unexpected hero into the right place when we need him the most.
Lord raised up.
You know, just like any other person that can politically proselytize and be opportunists that take advantage of a great opportunity in the movement. Because of the fact that the majority of most right-wing positions are that a position of populism. It is probably the most common thing to understand about the right-wing position. It is all based on populism. So, perhaps because this new formulation of MAGA is gaining power and speed in a way that the left are uncomfortable with, as they now have most doors blown open, most doors blown open wide for them. She needs to do this bit where she doesn't actually tell the full truth. But, you know, even watching Carl Strain would tell you this shit as certain. But if you wanted to really get down deep inside of it, doing something like studying the ICJs concerning it, you could even look back at some of the historical non-sex Epstein streams that aren't inside of EHD content and see and learn in real time. There's also the clip that I use frequently that explains it very succinctly from the other millennial, the big white male, that broke down the historic conflicts of the region, including all of the history of the region from when it was under British control to when it became the two-state solution that it currently exists in, and the perpetual forever war that it remains inside of, because they really want to glass Israel, but they're not being allowed to because America is constantly being forced to come in to play world police, and then people criticize America for playing world police and not doing enough to play world police. The best way that I can frame it to you is imagine that these two countries are forever held in a MOBA match, where America is not only the person funding both sides, but is also the person expected to supply the weapons. They brought the ball, they are the ones holding the toy, they are the ones that have to keep score, but we don't want to be here, and we don't want to be there. And we're forced to be there, because what? You want the Palestinians to die? And then, what? You want the Israelis to die? And it just ping-bongs between these two positions. Again, the toxic empathy. The suicidal empathy. There are kids that are starving. So you need to send food that then gets stolen by the terrorists, as they then use it to feed and continue to grow their operations, so that you then have to send money to Israel to continue the forever war that's been happening in this region long before and long after the war on terror, so that you can be a good person. And if you don't, you're not down with Miss Rachel, which is really the long-standing point she wants to make here. If you don't listen to her bullshit, you're a bad person. And all those people on Aladdin that sing on Broadway, they hate you. And they think that you should die. What? You're not down with Super Simple? You don't have happy kids on your TV? Tescuse. I need a refill. Excuse me. return with my refill. Fortunately, I've already pre-prepped dinner.
A thrice-married New York real estate developer to show American Christians what manhood and warrior courage looks like. I am the chosen one.
This is why they can decry passages against the gays, a topic Jesus never said anything about, but ignore his teachings about tolerance. It's why they can come up with religious justifications for prosperity, despite the obvious unholiness of being a billionaire.
It's also the same reason why the left can use Karl Popper and the topic and the intolerance and the intolerance paradox to justify being fucking shitheels, and then immediately trying to account the fact that that toxic paradigm itself is itself a fallacy. Because if the intolerant should be not tolerated against, you are effectively violating the NAP. And if you're violating the non-aggression principle, then it means by all policies of where you choose to push these things, I should discount the words you say as lies. Blatant lies, hysteria, and propaganda. Freerin got me. I know if nobody else got me, I know Freerin got me. I repeat yet again, you care more about the foreigner than you do about your countrymen. On purpose.
Why they can be so obsessed with abortion despite there being absolutely nothing in the Bible about abortion. Bible's a big book. So's the Quran. So's the Talmud. Look hard enough and you'll find a scriptural justification for whatever it is you want to get done. So, speaking of which,
Christ, I excel out the nation, for I have been saddled with the murder of you.
Between the Trump administration and Netanyahu's government driving this word into the ground to the point of meaninglessness, Netanyahu frequently describes claims of atrocities committed by Israeli soldiers, sometimes even coming from the soldiers themselves, as blood libel. So I want to talk about what anti-Semitism is before we can discuss what it isn't. I've organized the basics into a helpful list of tropes. 1. Jews control the money. In medieval Christendom, usury or money lending was considered a sin, and therefore a job relegated to your friendly neighborhood Jew, who was conveniently barred from other jobs. This can be seen in instances such as the word Jew being used as a verb, or this.
No going to the banks and borrowing from, in some cases, a fine banker, and in some cases, Shylocks and bad people.
Shylock, of course, being the villainous Jewish moneylender from Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. This is sometimes framed like benevolent racism. Jay-Z had a bit of pushback for this lyric in his song, The Story of O.J.
You want to know what's more important than throwing away money at a strip club? Credit. You ever wonder why Jewish people own all the property in America? That's how they did it.
Jay-Z's rebuttal being like, what? I'm just saying Jews are good at money. It might feel like he's being complimentary, but obviously he is drawing on harmful historic tropes and reinforcing the negative aspects of those tropes with this narrative. Key dog whistles include global banking, using the word Jew as a verb, Shylocks. Number 2, Jews control the media, evidenced by a disproportionately...
Do they? It seems that there's a very large proportionate amount of them inside of show business and politics, as well as news media, and it just so happens to be that every single time a person becomes popular, they find themselves with a wife and then have a child by said woman. Certainly, it's a case of you're surrounded by all this nice, white, fetid, and very, very, very halal ass. And it just so happens that every single African American happens to have a Jewish baby mama and or are married to a Jew. It just so happens to be the case. I leave you with that knowledge, cherish the thought, and happy doom scrolling when you go looking on how many there actually are.
A large number of Jews in the American entertainment industry relative to the general population. There are non-conspiracy reasons for...
She said it! She said it! She said it! She said it! Is it still a conspiracy? Is it still a conspiracy, or did I just say actual truth?
For this, you can check out the book An Empire of Their Own by Neil Gabler for a history of the Jewish community in early Hollywood. Key dog whistles include media elites, Hollywood cabal, liberal media. Number 3, Jews are...
These are not dog whistles. If it was a dog whistle, you wouldn't know what this word is. What you are looking for is you're looking for derogatory terms that you can use as slurs. That is not the same thing as dog whistle, because if it was a dog whistle, you wouldn't know about it. You wouldn't be making a show starring Jessica Chastain as a Nazi dog whistle expert who's going to be roaming through Reddit, finding ways to show how those nasty people on 4chan are secretly getting your children to do crazy things. Because now it's America's turn for a show that's like adolescent. Again, what do I know? I'm just some fucking black guy.
Actually secretly in charge of everything. Related to points 1 and 2, key dog whistles include shadow elites, puppet masters, globalists. Number 4, blood libel. Night, Jews kidnap and murder children to use their blood in satanic rituals. And also...
No one has ever said that was specifically Jews. None. Because here's a funny little notion about that. I could probably find a lot more Jewish gay men who are drag queens that will be speaking Yiddish. Such as the two drag queens talking about how one of them came out to their brother, and the brother was like, I don't give a shit. And the other said, what a mensch. I'm more likely to find gay drag queens that happen to be Jewish than I will find people specifically saying, it's Jew drag queens that are trying to trans your kids. Stop it. Stop it.
Drink it, possibly, I'm not sure. This is echoed today in QAnon conspiracy theories, only now instead of blood, it's adrenochrome, a totally real and not made up hormone secreted by frightened children that keeps you young if you drink it, and that explains why Bill and Hillary are looking so fresh these days. Key dog whistles include adrenochrome. So why is all this? Well, this brings me to point number 5, the Jews killed Jesus. So Jesus Christ Superstar. Jesus Christ Superstar was originally a concept album, and as such was the best-selling album in the United States for the entire year of 1971. But with popularity comes scrutiny, the highest profile of which at the time came from the Anti-Defamation League, a flawed organization. I'm not going to get into that right now. According to his autobiography, Andrew Lloyd Webber initially resisted the idea that Jesus Christ Superstar could be anti-Semitic. How could it be anti-Semitic? If Jesus Christ Superstar is anti-Semitic, that would mean the whole New Testament is anti-Semitic. You see where I'm going with this? Tropes that Jesus Christ Superstar includes the Pharisees prominently and unequivocally as the bad guy.
Must die, this Jesus must die.
To the point that it makes Judas, who is functionally the point of view character of this show, he's the Aaron Burr, almost their victim.
I don't want your blood, man, but you might as well take it, we think that you should.
The show makes Pontius Pilate into this super sympathetic character.
Thousands of millions crying for this man.
And then I heard them mentioning my name and leaving me the blame.
Don't worry, you will not get the blame. There's the focus on the silver, the way it transitions into this sort of huckster music when it shifts to the Pharisees.
We have the papers, we need to arrest him. You know his movements.
I'm not saying throw out Jesus Christ Superstar because it rules. If we throw out JCS, we have to throw out the whole New Testament. And I don't know, I just don't think that's a very realistic goal. Rather, we need to refocus our lens.
You could just throw out the particular renditions that you disagree with. But then again, if we do that, then we have to throw out all those examples historically of, hey guys, remember when we decided to make these posts and we decided to take the political profiteering? There I go again, dying again. Remember when we made these posts, and remember when we did the same thing with Trump, when we chose to make him the target of our Julius Caesar plays, the same way we had done so with our original black president, Barack Obama, but we wanted to go explicitly clear to make sure it wasn't just any politician, it was specifically Trump and his Trumpisms. We've never done that inside of theater before. Honest, would us drag kids lie? They said from their steeples in New York City. What's that? Cynthia Rivera, how did you get here? And how did your lighting in the movie get worse? That joke will only make sense to people who are actually looking at my Twitter feed. Anyways.
Through which we view all Holy Scripture. It was written by human people who were writing for a specific point in time for a specific audience, and the politics of that time shaped what was written in the New Testament. To the point...
Correct. Meaning...
where parts of it might just be a little ahistorical. We don't know exactly when the Gospels were written, but we have a pretty good ballpark. The Gospels basically tell the same story 4 times. There's a little bit of contradiction, but for the most part they overlap, especially with regard to how Jesus died. As Mark was likely written first, either during or right after the sacking of Jerusalem in 70 AD, there's a noticeable effort to downplay the culpability of the Romans in their responsibility for, the murder of God. Most biblical scholars argue that the authors of the Gospels place the blame on the Jewish authorities and not the Roman authorities who did kill Jesus, basically to placate the latter and distance themselves from their cousins who did not convert to Christianity and who were at the time very much on the shit list of the Romans. But don't you worry, Christians, your day will come. There's a whole laundry list of verses in the Gospels that place the guilt on the Jews, perhaps the most infamous being the blood curse in Matthew, where Pontius Pilate washes his hands of Jesus' blood and puts a curse on the Pharisees and their children for all time. So this narrative of who wanted Jesus dead and who made the call is very probably ahistorical and definitely politically motivated. Yes, early Christians truly were the original pygmies, for all the good it did them. In the 4th century, the Bishop of Antioch, John Chrysostom, who would eventually...
Get it? Because they got fed to the lions, chat. She's making fun of the people who got fed to the lions.
be canonized as a saint, authored Adversus Judaeos, a series of fiery homilies against the Jews. By the 5th century, Christianity was the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, and Jews were barred from civil service, the military, and the legal profession. The early Christian church portrayed Jews as unwilling to accept the word of God. Illumination showed Satan binding the eyes of the Jews, and some church leaders condemned Jews as agents of the devil and murderers of God. By the late Middle Ages, state laws all over Europe precluded Jews from owning land or holding office. Most labor guilds excluded them, forcing them into moneylending and commerce. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for the liberation of Jerusalem from the Muslim. This liberation entailed the slaughter of thousands of Jews while the Crusaders were on their way. Jewish chronicler Solomon Bar Simpson described Crusaders as seeing the Jews as preliminary enemies on the path to redeeming Jerusalem, with the Crusaders saying, "You are the children of those who killed the object of our veneration. Let us avenge him first on you before we go to fight the Ishmaelites." A huge reason for this murderous religious zeal was because they thought the end times were coming. The Crusaders came to believe that their military successes were signs that they were living in the last days and that they were being used by God to shape the course of the apocalypse. Any day now. The myth of blood libel started popping up the following century. Many historians point to the case of William of Norwich, a 12-year-old boy who was found dead in the woods around the year 1144. A local monk, Thomas of Monmouth, wrote a hagiography claiming Jews kidnapped and crucified William. There are several documented incidences of this happening in pre-Renaissance Europe. Some kid dies. Oh, it must have been the Jews again. Cue dozens of Jews getting tortured and or killed. Side note, blood consumption of any kind, let alone the humankind, is explicitly verboten in Judaism. Yeah, whatever, they don't care. In the Middle Ages, passion plays also gained popularity, basically acting out the crucifixions so that we can be reminded how much Jesus suffered and that we are all naughty, naughty boys. In the 14th century, Jews were accused of causing the Black Death because of their lower fertility rates, likely because tradition called for better hygiene in their communities. Martin Luther thought the Jews would convert to his new, cool Christianity, but when they were like, nah. I do find that the people who hate me the most are people who I've made to feel rejected in some way. From his book, Von den Juden und ihren Lügen, what shall we Christians do with this rejected and condemned people, the Jews? Their synagogue should be set on fire, and what does not burn shall be covered over with earth. Their houses also should be razed and destroyed. All their prayer books should be taken from them. During the Enlightenment, some called for the end of Jewish repression on the condition of assimilation. Many Jews were like, sure, others less so. Things kind of started to ramp up again in the late 1800s, with Jews being falsely blamed for the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881. The Romanovs were all too happy to use local Jewish communities as scapegoats as a way to maintain their own flimsy hold on power, and pogroms ensued from then basically until the Romanovs fell. But fortunately, under communism, things were still bad. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, social Darwinism was gaining popularity. Jews were recategorized not as an ethnographic religious group, but as Semites, people with immutable physical, mental, and genetic characteristics. Semites cannot be converted or assimilated because of their Semitic blood. In the early 20th century, we see the secular...
This is the beginning of one drop rule, and it's also the beginning of when Islam and Judaism became forms of religions that now hold the ethno-religious status, where you can be a part of the religion and still be a member of the parish by nature of your heritage. This is where the words are going to become very important, and why I made the distinction between a dog whistle and a secret password. Because Sibboleth is literally a secret password that was used to slay the Galatians that were fleeing after a failed and raised attempt at the border, where they got between them and the border and said, say the line. And when they said it the right way, they were killed. In other words, they literally and historically put together the means to say, you're not from round these parts. We don't talk like that. I don't know what she's yapping about in the other room.
Of anti-Semitism collide with social Darwinism. This is the origin of the whole Jews control the world thing. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a book detailing a Jewish plot to take over the world, was especially popular with the Nazis. It was a forgery, but they don't care. It was translated into every major language, and basically is a template for what we now associate with anti-Semitic tropes, and is circulated even today. But many of the older elements came into play in the 20th century as well. A majority of Prussian churches supported Nazis and used Luther's writings to support their cause. The 4th century homilies of St. John Chrysostom became very popular, with the Nazis seeking to justify the Holocaust to German and Austrian Christians. These beliefs were so pervasive that the Vatican finally had to proclaim the following: Jews are not rejected or cursed by God because of the death of Jesus. Neither all Jews then, nor any Jews today, can be blamed for the death of Jesus. This proclamation was issued out of Vatican II in 1965. So, do attitudes or actions taken against Jewish people need to fall under the aforementioned New Testament-fueled tropes in order to be considered anti-Semitism? Well, not necessarily. Like, a new stereotype could emerge that, Jews are really good at Fortnite, and that might get referenced in some mass shooter's manifesto 10 years from now. There is a little bit of room for subjectivity.
Or their name will be written on the rifle, the same way that the person will reference the individual during an event by saying, subscribe to this YouTuber. Or maybe we recognize that these things are things that opportunists and accelerationists will use because they know that you respond to them. And that you can't just say, well, we blame this on this and this and this because this and this and this. Because it leads people astray. and it's the wrong way to go about it, especially when you're using it for money on the internet. Be like Carl. Do it for free with the hope of money. It's morally better. Ting!
Here with the acknowledgement that context does matter. Moreover, things that are not inherently anti-Semitic, advocating for the liberation of certain groups, for instance, can be packaged with things that are, thereby muddying the waters and confusing the issue. People are not necessarily acting out of malice or bad faith if they are confused about anti-Semitism right now. It's always been based on a convoluted history, and the people in power are doing everything they can to confuse that history as much as possible. Because global anti-Semitism is rising. It is
the people in power. So leftists. Because despite what's currently happening in American politics, in general, leftist paradigms continue to be the norm. You have corrupted our institutions, and you have perversed them to what they currently are right now. Until they are saved, fixed, call it whatever you fucking want or what you have to. It will remain like that, in perpetuity, by design, because you want it that way. You try to get to the youth, and in some ways succeeded in various matches. But never you mind the logical truth that Carl's telling you. Carl's just a schizo. That's what they say, right?
is not helping anyone to deny that, or the fact that Israel's actions play a key role in that fact. And one of the things that haunts me the most right now is how successful Netanyahu's government and capitulating enablers all over the world have been at conflating Zionism with all Jews everywhere.
There it is. I told you it was coming. I told you it was coming. Mind you, I've only seen up to the point where she then transitioned into complaining about Trump. Everything else has been hard fucking reads, bitch. Welcome to Carl's Digital Library of Alexandria, otherwise known as the World.
$20 million Jews in the world, give or take. 8 billion other people, vast majority of which will never meet a Jew. So you have people calling out Israel and Bibi over here like, how dare you blood libel all Jews like that? And then in mainstream media, the whole world over, charitably being like, yes, you both...
Also, Carl, that thumbnail from yesterday, don't ever do that again. Now, Exo Crusher. I can't promise that. Wait a minute, Mr. Postman. I can't promise that. However, I do believe we've crossed like 5 boundaries on donations. Excuse me. I know Buster the other day was a renewal of 1. However, I'm pretty sure you just crossed the Platinum tune. Let me double check very quickly. Here's the thing, I don't know if it's true or not, but the fact that you're shitting on my brothers and calling us pigs me is not helping the argument. True. True. Okay, where's my fucking, where's my thing? I closed it. Let me open it again. YouTube player. Obsidian. Where's my thing? Where is my thing? Here we are. We have crossed the boundaries, boys. Art commissions for the community has been achieved. Hooray. I need the check mark. Color. Pen color. Let's do blue. Check. Ouch, I'm back. Continuing. Also, I cannot promise that I will never do it again. What I can promise you is that I will continue using the fan art that we have created over the years to make content. Because the reason why I've been making them is because the things that you guys have made as fan art over the years, I'm possibly going to have, for the ones that have been taken of me, specifically, have artists do their interpretations of them. Which X Crusher basically just fully funded with his 1 donation. Anyways.
Both have very good points. It's about the same level of brain rot as, you say you're sympathetic to, like, the babies dying in Palestine, and they say, like, oh, so you support Hamas? No.
So now understanding the concept and the sympathetic poison that they use to trick you into supporting their movement and then make you look and sound stupid is brain rot. It is brain rot to think Hassan Piker is retarded.
No, that's stupid. That's a stupid thing to say. What's wrong with you? Like, this is not a serious position. Instead...
The one thing that is helpful from this, that we do have to thank Lindsay Ellis for, is that because of the Shadow Mooney groups and because Hassan Piker has just basically become the face of the left, it is forcing them to have to come out and face these arguments and admit that these are things that are actively being said by saying it's brain rot, which otherwise means it's TikTok speech, it's TikTok arguments, rather than doing what they usually do, which is hiding on Nebula and pretending that they don't exist at all. It is a humble difference that I wholly welcome, because it means that we can pin them to these fucking pillories, and they can't just cope their way out of it. Where'd my health go?
Instead, you get disgraced sex pests like Andrew Cuomo blaming his primary loss on those f***ing Jews not knowing what's good for them.
More than 50% of the Jewish people voted for Mandan. They are pro-Palestinian, and they don't consider saying anti-Israel is different than being anti-Semitic.
And here's his almost as horrible brother Chris doing the same thing.
Because you are part of the new self-hating Jew. You're a bad Jew.
What do you mean self-hating Jew?
You are a Jew who is anti-Israel.
What does that mean, self-hating Jew? I'm not anti... What are you talking about?
That is why I think it is important to extend people some grace. It is a confusing, actually, and it is being engineered that way, deliberately so. And that is why we need to be mindful in a world where people in power are gaslighting us into thinking that obvious acts of...
People in power, the right wing, not the left wing, not the people who intervene in academia. No, it is specifically and intrinsically the right wing, not the left wing. We never had power, us. There was never that entire 12-year period where that happened. No. Perish the thought. That did not happen culturally, ever. We did not have a cultural zeitgeist that was controlled by medias behind the scene in ways where you could not be able to advocate for agency for yourselves. No. That never happened. Stop it, you lying liars. You're all desperate lying liars. You lie constantly. Barack Obama, what are you doing here?
...of anti-Semitism are not, and acts that are in no way inherently anti-Semitic are. The Book of Esther, set during the rule of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, tells the story of the king of Persia, probably Xerxes, choosing a new queen from amongst his lands. He ultimately lands on Esther, even though she is secretly a Jew. In fact, she hides from sexy King Xerxes. Hijinks ensue when the king's royal vizier contrives a plot to kill all of the Jews, which the hapless king just kind of agrees to willy-nilly. But don't worry, Esther steps up, the evil vizier gets killed, the massacre of the Jews is averted, but we do get a retaliatory massacre. In recent years, far-right political movements like the Heritage Foundation have claimed inspiration from the story of Esther. They were so inspired, in fact, that some came together to develop Project Esther.
Project Esther is an initiative that basically claims to be a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism in the U.S. But if you take a closer look at it, what Project Esther actually is, it's effectively a blueprint to dismantle or even destroy the pro-Palestine solidarity movement in the U.S. under the pretext of combating anti-Semitism.
Co-founder of Project Esther, Victoria Coates, a Christian Zionist, says in her book, The Battle for the Jewish State, biblical values on which our civilization rests have always promoted an alliance between Christians and Jews. Okay, Project Esther's main goal is to convince the public to perceive the pro-Palestinian movement as a global wave of anti-Semitism, to reframe pro-Palestinian advocacy as no longer about ideology or politics, but about terrorism and threats to American national security, and to get people to recognize that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are different manifestations of the same hatred against the Jewish people.
We have concluded there's been Jewish complacency. That means Jewish American groups, American Jews, have not done enough to fight anti-Semitism.
The vast majority of the board that put the proposal together are, of course, Christian Zionists. No major Jewish organizations participated in drafting the plan or have endorsed it.
Throughout the plan, they misuse Jewish text. They refer to Jewish groups with the wrong terms.
What I thought was gasping and wheezing was actually her being ignorant. We're fine. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Finally, homie can comment. Finally subbed on YouTube. I'm the guy you made a video for onto over a misunderstanding. Hello. Hi.
Interview actually with a member of the Heritage Foundation, they said something along the lines of, if Jews were doing their job countering anti-Semitism, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now.
This plan insults American Jews for not aligning with the heritage.
Oh, it's that homosexual gay. I remember this man. This is the man that was simping over Hassan Piker with our favorite journalist, Taylor Lorenz. Yes, 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 beautiful, beautiful, yes, yes, beautiful, beautiful, yes, beautiful, beautiful. Disco, disco, dance, dance, disco, disco.
Heritage Foundation's definition of anti-Semitism. It calls us complacent and our positions inexplicable.
Crazy.
First made public on October 7th.
Why is that person pixelated? Are they not a content creator on the internet?
2024 as a part of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 initiative, it has been adopted by extremist groups like Moms for Liberty, the January 6th Capitol rioters, and of course, the Trump administration. I mean, they say officially that they haven't, but like they've already put in like half of Project Esther's policies into effect, and they sure are working on the rest. One of the main strategies.
If they aren't a part of Project Esther, then they're not a part of Project Esther. You can say they are placing in their policies, and thus, if you say that, congratulations, you have fallen into my trap, where you are now advocating that they must be a part of it, despite the fact that they are not a part of it. So, when you say leftists aren't a part of these things, and we keep being blamed as though they are, that no longer is an argument that works.
Of Project Esther is to convince the public to perceive the pro-Palestinian movement as a global Hamas support network, threatening American Jewry and America itself. Pitch materials accused philanthropic groups like the Tides Foundation and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund of supporting an ecosystem of anti-Semitism. They also included an illustration of a pyramid topped by progressive elites leading the way. Ooh, there's one of our dog whistles. Including Jewish billionaires like
How is that a dog whistle? If it was a dog whistle, you wouldn't notice it. You wouldn't know what it looks like. I'm not gonna stop harping on this. You can't just say words. You can't just say words and say they're doing something you're not. Pain.
Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois and fucking Holocaust survivor George Soros. Of course, they had their little handy initialisms ready to go, just like CRT and DEI before it, introducing HSO, Hamas Support Organization. One goal.
Okay, so these words, they don't mean anything. They just make shit up. Except the fact that DEI was invented by the left. It was not invented by the right. I'm so sorry. That shit doesn't work out here. We survived Gamergate 2.5 and 3. We don't fall for that shit. Cope.
Is to label any organization that critiques the Israeli government as an HSO or a TSE, terrorism support entity.
The very notion, take for example the Hamas Support Network, which is the term used by the Heritage Foundation to describe the Palestinian Liberation Movement, it's a contrived and baseless smear that is obviously intended to vilify any and all criticism of the Israeli government. And the
Me like how it's usually done to do anything at all for any other groups everywhere in the world? So just like everybody else. Ah, okay.
accusations would be laughable. They're outlandish, they're baseless, if they weren't being translated into such deadly serious policy endangering people's lives right now.
According to Arno Rosenfeld and Forward, referring to the activist network as a cancer, the group also calls for passing legislation to counter it at the federal, state, and local levels. One goal is to get groups designated as TSEs, an abbreviation for terrorism support entity, which can...
Goodbye, balls. Stuart will miss you. Unmarked by time's cruelty. Also, before it slips my mind, somebody will need to remind me if I don't remind myself later. I'm going to start putting the YouTube streams up as an automatic unlist. They will remain up as unlisted unless I have reason to take something down for an actual serious concern or for the purpose of it being targeted for something. So any person who can find the broadcasts, you can always be able to find them in the alerts inside of the Discord and or the links that are tweeted out before the live streams. So if you're from Geist Twin, or if you're in my server and can see the notifications popping up as they are appearing, you can always click on those links and find those VODs. As well as the fact that they should be inside of Carl at Home. In the playlist, automatically.
Have severe legal consequences.
So that means that
anyone who's ever participated in a pro-Palestinian protest at a university, for example, is potentially providing material support.
Thing is, material support laws are vague, so they can define what they want as terrorism. Because they have so much leeway in what defines material support, using free speech to protest the war could be defined as material support. Spreading facts and figures about child death and injury could be considered material support.
What does that sound like, Lindsay? Does it sound like Nazism? Does it sound like you're against our regime doing a thing that we want, therefore you must be against us? Does it sound and look like that?
All this coming from an administration that, well...
Shylock. Any Jewish person that votes for her or the Democrat Party should have their head examined.
Musk posted a series of Nazi-related puns online.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Nope. She did it. She did it. She did it. She fell for the very fine people hoax. She did it. She did it. She did it. She did it.
According to Donald Trump's first wife, he kept a book of Hitler's speeches in a cabinet by his bed. I'm not sure I believe that because that would imply that the man reads books. However, according to a former chief White House aide, in his first term he privately expressed admiration for certain aspects of Hitler's leadership. In between presidencies, he dined with Holocaust deniers Nick Fuentes and nascent Hitler hiler Kanye West. There is a flirtation with Nazism in Trump world that borders on parody. Steve Bannon's ex-wife testified in a custody case that he didn't want their children to go to school with Jews. Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson has shared great replacement conspiracy material on social media. FBI Director Kash Patel has appeared 8 times on a podcast hosted by conspiracy theorist Stu Peters, who has posted photos of himself holding a copy of Mein Kampf with the message, Visionary Leadership. Paul Ingrassia, White House liaison to the Department of Homeland Security, has repeatedly praised alleged sex trafficker and Holocaust revisionist Andrew Tate, and has worked on his legal team. The list goes on and on. For an administration that is pretty shameless about either engaging directly in or having ties to people who engage directly in what looks an awful lot like flagrant anti-Semitism, they sure are concerned with fighting anti-Semitism. According to
Kanye West has often and was frequently mocked for it, just as much as Milo Yiannopoulos. Nick Fuentes was not involved in any serious way with any serious political campaign, and effectively was a bitch boy who was immediately moved away from and pivoted faster than you can say Shabbat Shalom. The majority of the cases against the Super Peter brothers, there is no serious support of them, except from people like Sneeko, who were the target marks of their war room controversies and scheme, and bitch comes from on. You cannot seriously think that that's going to work on people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about. In the same speed in which you choose to put a literal hoax up on camera and act like people are not going to call you on that, the amount of words that I have to say about it, you don't even have to hear me say them. Just go to any person who covers politics. Go to Stitch and Adam. Go to Tim Pool. Because she's returning, definitely go check out anything that Lauren Chen does. Go to Lauren Southern. Go to any of the Laurens. Go to any of the Megans. Go to any of the Courtneys. But definitely none of the Reagans. And possibly also the one Brett that we have. Every single one of them is going to call you out on the fucking line. It doesn't even have to be because of politics. It's just because we have the information and we know that that is not true. But it's not going to stop you from telling the lie anyways and putting in your content. Burying it deep at the point where most people have already tuned the fuck out. Which is why these essays are designed that way. They are designed to trick people into thinking that they have gotten the safe, secure, and correct message. But they haven't. Manipulation.
White House spokeswoman Taylor Rogers, President Trump has done more than any other president in modern history to stop anti-Semitic violence and hold corrupt institutions like Harvard accountable for allowing anti-American radicalism to escalate. Amy Spithalnik, the chief...
But Harvard is corrupt. Or did you not see what happened with the Miss Gay situation? Were you too busy in mobhood to know that? My mouth said mob. My mouth tried to say mom. Clearly, parenthood is now a mob. Which means you're all part of the Karma Mafia! You'll be getting your fedoras soon, boys. Also, make sure you stand by for your pinstripe suit fitting, and also, if you are fat, for your regular ambulatory shaming.
executive of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, said that if this administration were serious about countering anti-Semitism, it would not be appointing anti-Semitic extremists to senior positions, and it would not be normalizing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that have fueled attacks on Jews and others. But it isn't just deeply unserious loonies like the President of the United States equivocating pro-Palestinian activism with anti-Semitism.
So what about when the last president did it literally on camera by saying, if you don't vote the way that we do, you're not black? No? Oh, I'm sorry, that's what about it. Got it.
December, University of Florida professor of Holocaust Studies Norman Goda opined that the genocide libel deploys a range of anti-Semitic tropes, including the coupling of the genocide charge with the deliberate killing of children, images of whom are ubiquitous on NGO, social media, and other platforms that charge Israel with genocide. In other words, broadcasting images of Palestinian children killed by US-made bombs launched by Israeli pilots is doing an anti-Semitism. This is not limited to the United States either. I was just in Berlin working on a different project and was very shocked to learn that in response to pro-Palestine activism in the city, police had banned the Irish language as well. Lots of revolutionary slogans in the Irish language. The German police don't know what they mean though, so they just banned it, just in case. The whole language. In the UK, the Labour government...
Yeah, that's what censorship does. If you don't understand the language, stop them from speaking it publicly. That way they cannot be able to use the dog whistle publicly in front of you. That would be an actual dog whistle. Lindsay, that's an actual use and means of dog whistling. Lindsay!
Government has banned anything affiliated with a group called Palestine Action, which has been labeled as a terrorist entity after some activists threw red paint on some British warplanes.
So, defacing historical artifacts, political activism, actions that can then be seen as terrorism. Yep, checks out. Oh, it's just some oil. It's just some planes. It doesn't matter.
Police in London cracked down by arresting swaths of peaceful demonstrators. One of the main focuses on the road to the criminalization of pro-Palestinian activism has been education, the most aggressive push being on funding. To quote Project Esther's Victoria Coates, "As a former academic, I can tell you one thing they care more about than parking spaces is federal funding. The viciousness with which the other elements of the faculty will turn on the law schools and the Middle East studies folks. Subtle. You have institutions like Columbia, which we're all too happy to capitulate, along with the likes of USC and NYU. Thanks for that, guys. With Harvard bizarrely being one of the only major institutions to stand up to the administration. In June of 2025, the Department of Health and Human Service issued a formal Title VI civil rights violation notification to Harvard. In April, a joint task force to combat anti-Semitism issued a set of demands and froze billions in grants already awarded to the university. And, of course, they suspended Harvard's ability to enroll international students. This was later rescinded, but by then the damage had already been done. What top-tier international talent who's smart enough to get into Harvard is going to want to come into a country where your ability to finish your degree could be revoked at any moment? The administration has canceled the student visas of almost any international student found to be involved in pro-Palestinian demonstrations, going so far even as to imprison some, like Columbia grad student Mahmoud Khalil, who was held in prison for 102 days without charge. As of recording, nearly 3,000 international students have had their visas revoked, almost all because of engagement in pro-Palestinian campus activism. Even former Harvard professor Lawrence Summers, who denounced the university for awarding an honorary degree to an Israel boycott supporter, said, "It's hard to see this as anything other than pretextual. There are valid grounds for challenging Harvard's approach, but it's hard to imagine a less credible challenger than President Trump." To recap, this is not anti-Semitism.
Shylocks.
Nor is this.
A series of Nazi-related puns online.
Nor this.
Jews will not replace us!
No one is going to make the argument to say that that horrible, horrible protest in March, where Heather Heyer would lose her life in Charlottesville, is not anti-Semitism. Come the fuck off it. Come the fuck off it. There is a difference between you getting angry at a person's word. There's a difference between getting mad that edgy Edgeman trying to be edgy Edgerton, Mitch Edgerton V, means that he has to commit to even stupider actions to get recognition and claim with the gamers because he can't even play a video game well. And unironic Nazi marching in public. Carl, I have to ask, what did January 6th do that made those leftists mad? Is it envy? It was the fact that it happened. That even though there were implanted groups that were attempting to do something worse, that there were people who were capable and willing to demonstrate their capability and willingness to achieve one step further. They went to the place, and they actually did something that was peaceful. Actual peaceful protesting. Versus the people who were violently attempting to break into the building under the guise of being a part of a military group that was never addressed by those left-wing creators. They just took the pictures of them doing it and never showed them being unmasked, let alone the fact that there were fed agents that were implanted in those groups that allowed the things to happen, that were incentivizing for violence to happen so they could then arrest people and then hold them against their will. You know, the normal stuff.
This is fine.
Should have their head examined.
This is fine. This is fine. The FBI has wildly...
My heart goes out to you is not a Nazi gesture. That is him being fucking awkward. Because Elon Musk is a fucking awkward tryhard. Ugh!
reduce its monitoring of right-wing anti-Semitism, despite it being the cause for the vast majority of anti-Semitic violence worldwide. Project Esther doesn't collate instances of right-wing anti-Semitism at all, which... bold.
Project Esther has literally nothing to say about the fire hose of anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories coming out of the far right in this country, which are the leading drivers of anti-Semitic violence in the US, according to any and every serious study. So the sole target of this is pro-Palestinian groups and beyond, who they accuse of being not just anti-Semitic, but also anti-American.
This doesn't count, this doesn't count, this doesn't count. No, the real issue is pro-Palestinian activism, or more specifically, any criticism of the Israeli government's policies. Trump's executive order number, I swear I'm not making this up, 14188 mandated that agencies use the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition.
Girl, even if you wanted to say, oh yeah, he was specifically using 1488. He was specifically using 1488. Please, stop looking for fucking Nazis under every single fucking turnpike. This is why J.D. Vance made fun of you all when you did this with the Sydney Sweeney ad. Or are you going to add her in here too?
Definition of anti-Semitism. Under this legal definition of anti-Semitism, criticism of Israel is hate speech. This is the biggest crackdown on free speech in the United States since the Red Scare. It is being...
What, you don't want to say free speech? What happened to free speech?
Done in the name of protecting Jews, but it is not Jewish people that have put these policies in place. It has overwhelmingly been Christian Zionists and charlatans willing to exploit Christians as useful idiots. Cracking down on free speech in the name of protecting Jews has the effect of making Jews the face of power and authoritarianism to the unwashed masses.
It's making Jews the face of power, making Jews the face of authoritarianism, saying that it is because of Jews that XYZ.
They actively stoke anti-Semitism by making Jews the face of authoritarian crackdowns. And this feeds into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about shadowy outside Jewish power and makes Jews the one to blame for the long-time Christian nationalist goal of dismantling higher education.
One of Columbia's many recent capitulations to the Trump administration's demands includes DEI-like carve-out preferences for Zionist applicants. This is not to be confused with Jewish applicants. What they want is viewpoint diversity, but they are also mandating a special protecting Jewish students office while explicitly banning any sort of similar office for anybody else. So in this case, no, it is not Jewish students who are getting special treatment, but it sure looks like that's what's happening. According to a post by Sarah Lawrence professor Joel S., carving out Jews as the special exception to the general anti-DEI rules of the federal government makes Jews into a specially protected buffer class, which both engenders resentment from others and enables the government to make us scapegoats if things go bad. It's court Jews all over again. Court Jews referring to Hofjuden or Schutzjuden, Jews who held high positions in courts, usually finance-related, and were a protected class during the Holy Roman Empire. And something similar is happening in Germany right now. In November, the German Bundestag passed a cross-party resolution titled Never Again is Now, Protecting, Preserving, and Strengthening Jewish Life in Germany. The resolution includes numerous measures against anti-Semitism, almost all of which are associated with criticism of the actions of the Israeli state. But despite the exhausting and obvious truth that not all Jews support what Israel is doing, there sure are an awful lot of Jewish people who are all too happy to hop into bed with characters ranging from Christian Zionists, who see them as pawns in their own apocalyptic fantasies, to outright anti-Semites.
Something else that takes place after this huge battle is that a massive number of Jewish people recognize God's providence and turn back to Him. As a Christian, I believe that this means that many Jews are going to give their lives to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Disgusting!
Prominent premillennial dispensationalist John Hagee, who once declared that Adolf Hitler was descended from a lineage of accursed, genocidally murderous half-breed Jews, was invited to speak to an audience of thousands at the March for Israel in Washington this year to help condemn the rising trend of anti-Semitic violence.
If a line has to be drawn, then draw that line around both Christians and Jews. We are one. We are one.
The bad RFK, who earlier this year repeated the conspiracy theory that COVID-19 was targeted to spare Jewish people, was given an op-ed in the pro-Israel Jewish Journal titled RFK is an ally, not an anti-Semite, reassuring the reader that RFK's unwavering commitment to Israel as a Jewish state is sincere and integral to his political values. Marine Le Pen's National Front in France, the AfD in Germany, and Viktor Orban's Fidesz party in Hungary all have given unequivocal support to Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Elon Musk has been liking, promoting, or affirming anti-Semitic tweets.
And so has Emmanuel Macron, when he's not getting the shit beaten out of him by his predator wife.
left and right, but instead of knocking that shit off, he swore to combat anti-Semitism by banning users who posted phrases like decolonization and from the river to the sea, which he said were euphemisms that necessarily implied genocide. Anti-Defamation League chair Jonathan Greenblatt responded not to Musk's anti-Semitism, but to the censorship, saying, "I appreciate this leadership in fighting hate." Earlier this year, the ADL was first in line to assure the reader that, don't worry, this is not what it looks like. Who are you going to believe, the known liar and fraud or your own eyes? And then there's my personal favorite, Jewish right-wing blowhard John Podhoretz, who tweeted, "Trump bombed Iran. He can say Shylock 100 times a day forever, as far as I'm concerned." According to Guardian writer Sam Wolfson, we are now reaching an illogical conclusion where organizations supposed to protect Jewish rights turn a blind eye to antipathy towards Jews as long as proponents support Israel. This does not make Jews safer. It does not even make sense.
This is an effective strategy by the right because they're executing the policies they want to anyway, but they're doing so in the name of fighting anti-Semitism.
Deporting international students doesn't combat anti-Semitism. Public firings don't combat anti-Semitism. Withholding funds from research institutions doesn't combat anti-Semitism. Arresting activists doesn't combat anti-Semitism. We're not going to terrorize or incarcerate or deport or fire or infiltrate our way out of anti-Semitism.
One must ask, what is all of this in service of? Genocide is a neologism coined by Polish lawyer Raphael Limkin. Limkin was horrified by the Turkish slaughter of Armenians during World War I, but even more appalled that it was not a crime in the conventional sense, that people could be held accountable for murder, but nations could not.
Keep in mind, you just said that the Armenian genocide happened, so you just pissed off an entirely different constituency of left wing.
Limkin pushed for international recognition both of genocide as a concept and as a legal term in the aftermath of the Holocaust. And on December 11, 1946, the General Assembly of the United Nations declared genocide a crime under international law. In 1948, the General Assembly took it a step further by adopting Resolution 260A, the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which obliged contracting parties to undertake to prevent and to punish acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. In the words of author and journalist Philip Gorovitch,
just as the state's police swear to prevent and punish murder, so the signers of the Genocide Convention swore to police a brave new world order.
The United States, ever in the camp of "you can't tell me what to do," dragged its feet on signing onto the Genocide Convention until the mid-1980s. But by 1994, they had been a signatory for almost a decade. Then came Rwanda.
Le Rwanda appartient à ceux qui le défendent vraiment. Et vous, les Nyingi, vous n'êtes pas des Rwandais.
It is, I think, the standard against which all future tragedies will be measured. A calamity of such epic proportions, so massive in size and scope, the truth of it is far beyond journalism's reach.
One of the stories from Sunday school you've probably forgotten is that time that Noah got faced and naked in a cave, and his son Ham walked in on him, causing Noah to curse him and all of his progeny, saying, "A slave of a slave shall he be to his brothers." This passage has enabled a lot of weird interpretations from a lot of weird little freaks. One of the most pervasive interpretations from the last 500 years is this idea that Ham was the first black guy. And that's why slavery is not only fine, but divinely ordained. British explorer...
What a twist, huh? First we go from, actually, it's acceptable that we harass you guys perpetually for things that actually didn't happen the way that we're saying that they happened. Immediately smack dab into the middle of, excuse me, sir, have you considered the fact that I deserve the right to say that you're all being anti-Semitic? And then a hop, skip, and a jump into actually slavery is good. Something nobody said. Isn't it fun to be in the leftist brain chat?
Eugenicist John Hanning Speke, the first European to discover the source of the Nile, devoted much of his Journal of the Discovery of the Source of the Nile to descriptions of the physical and moral ugliness of Africa's primitive races, in whose condition he found a strikingly existing proof of the Holy Scriptures. Speke applied the Hamitic myth to the people of Rwanda, claiming the Hutu were descendants of Ham, and thus divinely fated for servitude, while the Tutsi were a noble, possibly Christian lineage from the Middle East, divinely fated to lord over the Hutu. On contemplating these sons of Noah, as they were then, so they appear to be now, he had found a time capsule, a snapshot of what the sons of Ham looked like 5,000 years ago at the dawn of the third dispensation. It is now believed believed by ethnologists that the Hutu and the Tutsi are not distinct ethnic groups. At least they weren't until they caste systemed themselves not too long before European colonizers showed up. There's a set of assigned physical characteristics, stereotypes if you will, that Tutsis are taller, lighter skinned, have sharper, more angular faces and more European noses, and that Hutus are stockier, shorter, have wider noses, that sort of thing. Most people in the sources that I've read will tell you that these stereotypes are kind of bullshit, that you can't really tell these groups apart based on physical characteristics alone. But it doesn't really matter whether these stereotypes are true or not. What matters is they were believed and adhered to. At the 1885 Berlin Conference, convened to regulate and formalize the colonization of Africa, Germany, who kind of missed the boat on the whole scramble for Africa thing, was granted custody of Rwanda. However, Germany wasn't interested in sending a bunch of guys down there to maintain it. It's in the middle. It has no coastline. It's the size of Vermont. It has no gold or natural resources. So instead, the Germans conscripted the Tutsi upper class to run the place for them. Quoting Gorovitch in his book, "We wish to inform you that tomorrow we will be killed with our families, Stories from Rwanda."
By the time that the League of Nations turned Rwanda over to Belgium as a spoil of World War I, the terms Hutu and Tutsi had become clearly defined as opposing ethnic identities, and the Belgians made this polarization the cornerstone of their colonial policy.
But where the Germans kind of passively encouraged this Hutu-Tutsi caste system from a distance, took advantage of it, the Belgians turbocharged it. They sent scientists to Rwanda. They had cranial calipers. They had phrenology. They weighed people. They measured heights and girths. And noses. They were very obsessed with nasal width.
Those with thinner noses, like the skin, they used to measure the width of people's noses.
In 1933, the Belgians introduced a system in Rwanda very similar to the one that the Germans would introduce in their own country the same year, one that cemented a sort of Jim Crow system in the country. Papers. Things came to a head in 1959 when a rivalry between political leaders sparked massive anti-Tutsi violence. Thousands of Tutsis were killed and over 100,000 fled into neighboring countries like Burundi, Uganda, and the Congo. 3 years later, Rwanda gained independence with the Hutu majority now in power. Periodic massacres would follow for the next 30 years. In 1973, Hutu General Juvenal Habyarimana seized power in a military coup. Civil war broke out in 1990 when many Tutsi who were exiled as children, now adults, invaded Rwanda as the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or RPF. Paul Rusesabagina was a Hutu survivor who saved the lives of over 1,200 people. You may know him as the character Don Cheadle played in the 2004 film Hotel Rwanda. In his words,
"With the start of the Civil War, the myth-making machine went into high gear. There was suddenly no distinction between Tutsis and exiled RPF rebels. They were lumped into the same category of rhetoric. The war itself was cast as an explicitly racial conflict, and ordinary Rwandans started to arrange their lives around this idea."
On April 6, 1994, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down. Nobody knows for sure who did it, although most historians believe it was probably extremists in Habyarimana's own party, because the Hutu power movement was nothing if not prepared. The killing began within minutes. Radio stations like RTLM Radio encouraged the citizens, who they had already armed, to do their work. Although the killing was carried out mostly with machetes, over 800,000 people were killed out of a population of roughly 7.5 million, more than 10% of the population in less than 100 days. It was not the largest genocide in history, but it was the fastest and the most efficient.
The Tutsi populations of many villages were all but eliminated. Radio announcers reminded listeners not to take pity on women and children.
Children especially, proclaimed one story, a cockroach cannot give birth to a butterfly. In Philip Gorovitch's book, he tells an anecdote about a Rwandan guy he interviewed in the United States who was of the opinion that if it had been a black person who'd killed JFK instead of Lee Harvey Oswald, all the whites in America would have killed all the blacks, or tried to. And that's why the Rwandan genocide happened. The Tutsis were believed to have killed the president, so we just had to kill all the Tutsis. That's just how these things happen. Gorovitch noted this comment as absurd, because it is. No, that's not what would have happened, because the infrastructure for genocide was not in place. According to Holocaust survivor and genocide scholar Irvin Staub, societies do not just start to destroy large groups of human beings. There is a developmental course. In the course of this evolution, both individuals and the system as a whole change. The motivation for killing evolves, and inhibition diminish. Again, quoting Paul Rusesabagina.
"Look closely at each of the world's recent genocides, however, and the surface differences burn away. The core of genocide is always the same. They erupt under the cover of a war. They are the brainchildren of insecure leaders eager for more power. Governments ease their people into them gradually. Other nations must be persuaded to move away. And all genocides rely heavily on the power of group thinking to embolden the everyday killers."
Historian Patrick Wolf is widely credited with popularizing settler colonial studies, and he says of settler colonialism that it is not an event, but a structure. Genocide is a part and parcel of that structure because a goal of settler colonialism is to replace one ethnic group with another. But genocide itself is also not an event, but a structure, both ideological and physical, and it has three major prerequisites. 1. Authoritarian leadership in a weakening position.
It always bothers me when I hear Rwanda's genocide described as the product of ancient tribal hatreds. I think this is an easy way for Westerners to dismiss the whole thing as a regrettable but pointless bloodbath that happens to primitive brown people. And not just that, but that the killing was random and chaotic and fueled only by brute anger. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is a reason why Rwanda's genocide was the quickest one in recorded history. There was a method to the madness, and it was about power. What scared our leaders most was the idea that Rwanda might be invaded and their power taken away.
2. Mass dehumanization. Step 1 is the easy part. That happens all the time. Step 2 is the hard part. It is neither easy nor natural. It takes time, sometimes even generations, to convince one group that another group has to be eradicated, or at least to convince the first group to turn a blind eye to it.
Stripping the humanity from an entire group takes time. It is an attitude that requires cultivation, a series of small steps, daily pending.
But in the modern era, there is a third major prerequisite, arguably the biggest one, a complicit international community.
Rwanda.
People are not complicit in it. People have no idea what to do, because how the fuck am I supposed to stop a missile from hitting a building where they want to fire a JDAM at a hospital? We don't live there. We don't know. Not doing enough. You need to say something. Okay, let me look into the history of the region. No! You can't look into the history. Listen and believe. Well, I'm not going to do that. Nazi! 1, 2, 3. There's your step. African American men and black men and white men and Asian men. What are you doing here? Please, Lindsay, speak for all of the left. How did you lose the white men? How'd you do it? What was that thing that you were told? What was that thing that you campaigned and now have spent money on as a party, trying to figure out how to talk to those men? What did you lose during the last election? What split your vote? More than those white women and black women that open their mouths for white and black cock. And speak up for racial issues. What happened? That's the answer to the problem. In this diatribe she just presented, she said, oh, it was a plan. They went out of the way. They made them excluded. And that's the reason why it happened. No. The conditions of what happened in Rwanda are different than what's happening in America. No. How people feel about politics and how they particularly feel about the issue of politics concerning that specific movement is not the way that it happened there. No. There's a reason why they feel a certain way about these politics. There's a reason why they feel and how they speak, how they do about those politics and about those people in those situations. Stop it. Stop it. You keep lying. Stop lying. If you stop lying, I stop having talking points, but you won't stop lying. It's such a big lie to tell, too. Because we remember when it happened. We remember when it happened, Lindsay. All of the left wing said, if you don't speak up, you are for the racism and bigotry. And we all told them, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. No, I'm not. And you said, yes, you are. And we're going to harass you permanently for it. Hi, Lindsay. This is less those who refuse to learn history are bound to repeat it, and more, history is written by the victors and forgotten by the short-sighted. In your speed and in your haste to say, Trump did it, Trump did it, did you forget all of the other presidents came before him too? Yes, you did. Because it's about anti-Trump. Common sense doesn't exist here. In your arguments.
It was a failure on so many levels. It started as a failure of the European colonists who exploited trivial differences for the sake of a divide and rule strategy. It was the failure of Africa to get beyond its ethnic divisions and form true coalition governments. It was a failure of Western democracies to step in and avert the catastrophe when abundant evidence was available. It was a failure of the United States for not calling a genocide by its right name. It was the failure of the United Nations to live up to its commitments as a peacemaking body.
The desertion of Rwanda by the UN force was Hutu power's greatest diplomatic victory to date, and it can be credited almost single-handedly to the United States. With the memory of the Somalia debacle still very fresh, the White House had just finished drafting a document called Presidential Decision Directive 25, which amounted to a checklist of reasons to avoid American involvement in UN peacekeeping missions, while the Clinton administration actually forbade unqualified use of the G word. Christine Shelley, a State Department spokeswoman, was a bit more to the point when she rejected the denomination of genocide because she said there are obligations which arise in connection with the use of the term. She meant that if it was a genocide, the Convention of 1948 required the contracting parties to act. Washington didn't want to act, so Washington pretended that it wasn't a genocide.
Since we have every reason to believe that acts of genocide have occurred.
How many acts of genocide does it take to make genocide?
Ellen, that's just not a question that I'm in a position to answer.
Are you at the point yet where you would call what's happening in Gaza a genocide?
You can use whatever word you want. It's true that that you have specific guidance not to use the word genocide in isolation, but always to preface it with this word acts of.
I have guidance which I try to use as best as I can.
Genocide is a legal term. What is going on now, clearly, is absolutely horrific.
Genocide is, of course, a heinous atrocity, one of the most heinous atrocities that any individual can commit. Those are allegations that should not be made lightly, and as it pertains to the United States, we are not seeing any acts that constitute genocide.
If empathy is politically inexpedient, the word genocide is even more so. It isn't just an emotionally loaded term, it is a legal term that carries with it a bunch of obligations. We signed treaties agreeing that in the event of genocide, we have to act. So, it's probably best just not to use the word at all. After Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933, things snowballed with stunning speed, and by July of that same year, the Nazis were the only legal party in the country. Members of the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute were faced with a decision. Some fled the country, but most remained and acclimated to the new regime. The first order of business was to negotiate with the Nazi authorities so the institute wouldn't be abolished. In the summer of 1933, they agreed to Aryanize the board of directors by excluding Jewish members. The institute distanced itself from psychoanalysts who were being persecuted for political beliefs as well, and eventually excluded everyone who was Nichtrechtsdeutsche, i.e., all Jews. Over time, the institute reshaped psychoanalysis itself so that it would appeal to Nazi ideology. In 1936, it was rebranded to the German Institute of Psychological Research and Psychotherapy and installed Hermann Göring's cousin as the director. By the end of the decade, the institute had become involved with euthanasia killings of the mentally ill, deformed, and of course, the gays. Eventually, the institute helped to develop criteria for choosing victims and participated in their selection, and by the end of the war, it was a well-oiled cog in the genocide machine. In the early 2000s, UC Irvine professor of ethics and political scientist Kristen Renwick Monroe did a series of studies interviewing hundreds of people who lived through World War II to help identify and understand what makes people go from normies to active participants in genocide. She ultimately came to describe 3 types of person in Nazi-occupied Europe: the rescuer, the bystander, and the perpetrator. She found that altruism is explained not by demographic factors, but by self-image. The rescuer's choice options were determined and limited by their strong sense of human connection and a cognitive classification process in which all human beings are placed in the same category, and hence equal and worthy of the same treatment. Survivors noted of rescuers, these were not people making choices on reflection, they just had to do it because that's the kind of people they were. Then there were the perpetrators, whose self-image can basically be summed up in one word: victim. The world is out to get us, we are abused and put upon, we have no choice but to fight back. Defend ourselves, if you will. The perpetrator's chief motivation wasn't really personal happiness so much as the need to protect the in-group, which they perceived as besieged from all sides. Monroe describes the worldview of a Nazi supporter named Florentine, who was staunchly loyal to her Nazi ideals to the end of her life. Her view of the Nazis as simple, trusting people, tricked and threatened by Jews, resembled other Nazis' worldviews. It's not unique, and as bizarre as it might sound, it is a worldview in which the Nazis become the victims of Jewish plots. Perpetrators justify their actions through just world thinking, devaluing victims and seeing their acts as serving higher purposes. And then there are the bystanders, i.e. the vast majority of people in any culture, not just Germany. Their chief motivation really is just to have material goods and to be left alone. They don't feel deeply invested in giving their life for the Reich, but they also don't feel deeply connected to humanity either. But the bystanders had more in common with the perpetrators than they did with the rescuers. Both bystanders and Nazis exhibited worldviews colored by fatalism and a sense that human beings are buffeted by the winds of history. This fatalism is related to their perceived lack of choice in terms of helping others. What defined which...
I'm concerned with the fact that you think that they had no reason to be concerned with their survival. If you say Schindler's List, I'm going to fucking start laughing at you. Oh my god! Always with the yapping. But Carl, you're not fighting against her historical graphical, because the thing that she's trying to paint out with history is the more important argument to rebut, not the historical contexts. Someone else will handle the historical contexts, just for the people on the street, the nigga on the news, the nigga on the net, who needs to know exactly what it is here that she's trying to say with all the big words. That's what I'm interested in rebutting. Certainly wiser eyes than mine will have something to say about it. I'm just an African American, making basic, recognizable arguments. Welcome back, Absolute Kagami. You've probably dodged the worst parts of the content. And we've also crossed the first milestone on the donation reward.
Category these people were slotted into was based not on religious background, nationality, race, or even class. Note that one of the most famous people in the rescuer class to come out of World War II, Oskar Schindler, started the war...
Just these horrid reads from the Digital Library of Alexandria. One of the first of the many 7 wonders of Carltopia. Where the 7th wonder is my wife's ass. I'm in pain. I hate when they're so predictable. I hate when they're so fucking predictable. Oh my god.
As a flagrant opportunist and a member of the Nazi Party. He amassed a considerable fortune.
So, let's hear that without the pause, Andy.
War II, Oskar Schindler, started the war as a flagrant opportunist and a member of the Nazi Party. He amassed...
You see, one of the most famous people who saved people was actually an opportunist. All the Nazis are doing is they're taking advantage of you and how quickly you are to use their arguments and their layman's and their terms. Don't you understand?
amassed a considerable fortune in the early years of the war, but by the end of the war he had spent all of it just to keep a small number of Jews out of the extermination camps. What separated the rescuer types was their self-image, and what brought them fulfillment. The cognitive model for rescuers is helping others. For bystanders, it's material well-being or affluence, and for perpetrators, it is to follow the leader or community and to protect the in-group from a world out to get us. Important to note also that these categories are fluid. Note again the example of Oskar Schindler. Where rescuers and perpetrators tended not to shift categories, bystanders did out of necessity, which brings us back to the example of the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute. Most of the founders of the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute were Jewish. Psychoanalysis as a science was founded by Sigmund Freud, a Jew. By 1933, 12 years after the Institute's founding, all of these people had been pushed out of the Institute, and the Jewish co-founders of the science of psychoanalysis had been erased from the Institute's history. Bystanders can evolve to accept or even inflict suffering, as exemplified by German psychoanalysts who joined the Nazi system. German bystanders actively upheld the Nazi system just by going along with it, even something as minor as heiling Hitler all the time so as not to.
You heard that right. The Jews helped it along by going along with it, by doing what they could to survive and to keep themselves safe. You, person who had to lie to your fucking leftist professor so you could get a good grade and get your degree and not get flunked because you didn't have the right political leanings. You don't have a reason to complain and cry. Why? You are not like them. They had a historic reason to do things, but you're still a part of the leftist system because you didn't speak up for what was right and then get your fucking life destroyed for standing up for your principles. So, the thing that's wrong with this is that the thing that I just described, the idea that if you are a true believer, you need to stand on principle and die for your beliefs and die for your convictions, effectively have your life destroyed, commit life ruination by blowing your life up, by being unwilling to say that Jesus is not King and Lord, and thus be executed because you've outed yourself, which is a shibboleth. When you refuse to say the compelled speech of the party-approved password that then gives you the ability to survive society, she's saying Christians don't have that same right when they're being persecuted, and also they are the ones doing it to people, and they're doing it without just cause. So just like the third and second crusade that were a response to the first crusade, and the many backs and forths of holy wars that were responses to other holy wars, the cultural comparative and the cultural dialectic that masses over this says that you and I, if you have cultural takes, you have cultural opinions, where you do not want to go along with her arguments, simply because you can see the parallels between forcing people to say things they don't believe in order to live in society, is wrong. But actually, you're a part of the system if you don't stand up for what is right and get executed by those in power because you believe so strongly in that viewpoint. So basically, destroy yourself, otherwise you're not a real one. Have no political acumen. Have no political tactic. Do not recognize where you are right now and then act accordingly. Just power level. Just shine like a bright, shining, glowing diamond in the dark so that they can figure out how to destroy your business and your property. The left wing is telling you to destroy yourself instead of protect yourself. If that is the dialectic that she wants to argue for. In saying that they helped it along by not immediately becoming mass murderers. And in the alternate timeline where they did do that, what would have been the response from a party already in power, already committing a genocide? Certainly, I'm not questioning the number. But in this alternate timeline, again, the fictional alternate timeline, that would have created an action of if they behaved like that, I don't think 6 million, roundabout, would have been the final number, Lindsay. Usually when the people are being harassed by a group that's already dead set on killing them, they don't stop just because a few people revolted. I don't know what kind of fucking play or what kind of goddamn Amazon Prime show you think you're watching, But it does not happen like Jojo Rabbit, and it does not happen like The Man in the High Castle. And it certainly doesn't happen like Iron Sky or Iron Sky 2. There is no, and then they clapped after the leftist speech. They just shoot you in the fucking head. And or the political equivalent of doing so. Which would be why Trump made it so that nobody can be debunked anymore. Both left-wing and right-wing. But you see, that's a problem. Because amongst those many things that you said that he was putting into place, that was one of them. That's a bad thing. It's a bad thing that he stopped people from being debanked. Because that took away a tactic that you want to use against them. As a member of a party. Disgusting.
To attract negative attention from the Reich. They use denial or avoidance to distance themselves from victims for self-protection. Because there is a fourth category here as well, obviously. Targets, the real victims and survivors, and individuals from all three of the aforementioned groups will end up caught in that net as well. In the early 90s in Rwanda, there was a popular Hutu musician named Simon Bikindi, who in 1993 released a song called Nanga Abahutu. Its target, as evidenced by the song's title, was not the Tutsis, but on Hutu moderates who were not on board with the Hutu power movement's genocidal aims. In the Rwandan genocide, it wasn't just the Tutsis who were slaughtered in mass, it was moderate Hutus as well. As the dehumanization process energizes, more and more bystanders will get conscripted, or they will be thrown into the wood chipper as well. To the Trump administration, moderate Jews undermine his narrative. They are a problem. To Netanyahu's administration, diaspora Jews, especially ones that don't see Israel as their birthright necessarily, are a problem. Their existence undermines the legitimacy of a colonial project. This is why Netanyahu's government encourages global anti-Semitism by doing war crimes and then conflating the nation-state of Israel with all Jews everywhere, forever. This is not a bug, it is a feature. Same with the Trumps and Cuomos of the world. Behold Steve Bannon at CPAC this year.
People in Israel gotta understand something.
Bannon, the man who was in jail because of what happened at January 6th? That guy? Did you forget that? Oh, no, you don't care. You celebrate that he was in jail for some bullshit. As was other people. Granted, we know that he's a Fed plant, but people like Baked Alaska shouldn't have been held without due process just because you don't like them. That shouldn't happen. But yes, complain more about Bannon.
One enemy to the people in Israel are American Jews that do not support Israel and do not support MAC. The biggest single enemy to the Jewish people are not the Islamic supremacists. The biggest enemy you have is inside the wire. Progressive Jewish billionaires that are funding all this stuff.
About a month after October 7th, 2023, Elon Musk replied, "You have said the absolute truth" to a social media post that read, "Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them." The owner of that account went on to say he was deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit now about Western Jewish populations. These people aren't just setting their sights on pro-Palestinian activists, but on Jewish people who do not fall in line, framing them as aberrant while using them as pawns. There's this saying in leftist spaces that if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds, which is, in my opinion, a very cynical way of framing a thing that is basically true, but when they say liberal, what they mean is bystander. And in a genocidal state, if the genocidaires hold power long enough and completely enough, sooner or later, everyone will be forced to choose a side. There will be no more bystanders. You either join the genocidaire, or you become their victim.
What does that sound like to you? Does it sound like there is no standing neutral on a moving train? Oh, no. Not like that, right, Lindsay? But not like that. Except they do mean liberal. Because it's going to be the liberals that allow it to happen. Because they aren't made for combat in war. Because you're inside boys and girls. And always have been. Sag, please wrap this shit up.
Between April 6th and July 4th, approximately 800,000 Rwandans were slaughtered. This is a number that cannot be grasped with the rational mind. It is like trying, all at once, to understand that the Earth is surrounded by billions of balls of gas just like our sun across a vast blackness. You cannot understand the magnitude. Just try. 800,000 lives snuffed out in 100 days.
Schindler's List and Hotel Rwanda are pretty similar films. Both center on the narrative of two historical rescuer figures, Oscar Schindler and Paul Rusesabagina. Both films are pretty accurate as far as Hollywood historical dramas go. They both face impossible odds, they are both reluctant heroes, they even both save roughly the same number of lives. But the most fascinating similarity to me is the way these men went about those rescues, just how much bribery and flattery and money came into the way they went about things. Paul Rusesabagina, both in the film and in real life, kept his people alive by buying food from and being buddies with one of the chief of the genocidaires.
You do not honestly believe that you can kill them all?
And why not? Why not? You're halfway there already.
Don't Google it, the film toned him down. Schindler did the same thing, cozying up to one of the most evil men in a cartoonishly evil regime. Really do not Google him. Oskar Schindler spends a whole lot of his movie sending gifts to Nazi officials, partying with them, flattering them, and eventually bribing them. The eponymous list was basically the number of people Schindler could afford to buy as his workforce. Both films grapple with this idea that there's like an exchange rate, that human life can be bought in the most dire circumstances, but only if you have the money, meaning that you can't save everybody. Probably the most famous scene in Schindler's List is the ending. Schindler gives this big speech after Germany surrenders. He tells the Schindler-Juden that they've survived, good for them, and he tells the Nazis to fuck off, and they do. And he's like, I gotta go because they're gonna think I'm a war criminal.
I'm a profiteer of slave labor. I am a criminal. At midnight, you'll be free, and I'll be hunted.
Schindler's not very emotional about it in this scene. It's only in the following scene, as Schindler is leaving and the Schindler-Juden give him the parting gift, a gold ring with an inscription.
It's Hebrew from the Talmud. It says, whoever saves one life saves the world entire.
And this is where Schindler breaks down.
I could have got more. If I'd made more money. I didn't do enough.
You did so much.
Why did I keep the car? 10 people right there. 10 people. This pin. 2 people. This is gold. 2 more people. You would have given me too far. At least one. Could have. He's gone. One more person. And I did.
In my research for this video, there was this journal article by SUNY New Paltz professor Matthew Newcomb that I kept coming back to called Feeling the Vulgarity of Numbers, which explores the difficulty of engaging with atrocities at scale in an educational setting, or even the extent to which numbers should be a measure of atrocity at all. Perhaps nothing is more difficult to measure than suffering, yet statistics and other numbers present measurements of loss, if not direct suffering, regularly. The article uses the Rwandan genocide as a sort of home base to talk about the issue, and it begins with this anecdote about the author's building super coming to fix a leaky faucet in his apartment. This Muslim dude named Salim, who sees that Newcomb is working on something about the Rwandan genocide, and Salim makes this comment about how he just can't imagine killing another person, and he quotes the Quran. If you take a man's life, you kill a whole nation. On his way to the next apartment, Salim authoritatively stated that he would not kill someone, even to save his own life, and that all we can do is pray. The Quran quote is, whoever takes a life, it will be as if they killed all of humanity, and whoever saves a life, it will be as if they saved all of humanity. A quote like this is also in the Talmud.
It's Hebrew from the Talmud. It says, whoever saves one life saves the world entire.
I kept coming back to this article because it illustrated both the necessity and the failure of numbers when we were talking about large-scale atrocities. Suffering is an immeasurable concept, so we have to quantify it using numbers. People affected, people displaced, people killed. How many of those people are children? But it's also kind of an...
Actually, it's very quantifiable. What happened to the land? Is it arable? Was it salted and destroyed? Is there anything left of the people who have been removed, and anything of the land that has been destroyed? And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Until you can get a quantifiable number of what it is that is owed. You know what that's like? That's like the total of governments and governance going into enlisting the amount of profits that they could have made, that they were promised, that they didn't get from their investments. But in terms of colonizers, because if you can't rule a people, there's no reason to destroy them. Obviously. So these people are supposed to. These conquerors are meant to enslave people so they can then have something of them when they are done. If they destroy everything, they can't get the job done because there's nothing left to do. Because they're all destroyed and dead and buried. And as a constance to that inevitable outcome, you have created a problem for which there can be no proper solution. Because who's going to replace those lost profits?
Exercise in futility, this extremely faulty method to measure the unmeasurable. Quoting Paula Treicher in her book, How to Have...
You say that it's impossible. It's because the majority of you can't imagine it, because you're soft as baby shit. Like most leftists.
Theory in an epidemic about the AIDS crisis in Africa.
Remember when this used to be about the horrible, horrible crimes of Miss Rachel?
The overwhelming difficulty of even characterizing the diversity of the epidemic, let alone containing it, suggests that statistical numbers, may once again be functioning as Raymond Williams said they did in the late 19th century, to offer us the illusion of control. In the aftermath of October 7th, there was this misinformation narrative going around to help justify IDF atrocities about Hamas beheading dozens of infants and or stuffing them into ovens.
Never mind the atrocities that they did do. No, we want to talk about those rumors that were either proven false or were half-truths of what was actually done.
A lot of people still fervently believe this.
Where young children were murdered, burnt, babies in ovens.
That didn't happen. There were no
children that were burnt. quote, comma, and babies in ovens. That never happened. That never happened. Ethan Klein crying at a child that was being cradled by their parent after they got destroyed and eviscerated and turned into a charred husk. What are you doing here?
No babies in ovens.
Oh, yes, they were.
No, there weren't. That's been refuted even by the Israelis.
There were.
No, there weren't.
There were.
There were no babies in ovens.
I had one friend who was so turned off by learning that this was misinformation that he was inclined to believe that no babies had been killed by Hamas on October 7th because the propaganda, the misinformation, was just so outlandish. But this is not true. It just wasn't 50 of them. It was just 1 or 2. But then there's that numbers problem again. Don't worry, it wasn't 50, it was only a couple of them, and they weren't beheaded, they weren't put in ovens, they were just shot. Does that make it better? I wouldn't think so if that was my baby. University of Oregon professor Paul Slovich says, there are ranges of psychological studies that give reasons as to why numbers often do not have a potent impact on readers. One reason is that human responses may have evolved to protect individuals and their small family and community groups from present, visible, and immediate dangers. This effective system did not evolve to help us respond to distant mass murder. Whataboutism is a common deflection when you talk about the genocide in Gaza. What about the Israeli hostages? Why don't you care about them? I don't doubt some of these people who use this rhetorical device feel it sincerely, but it is also done in bad faith.
Over 14,000. It's done in bad faith because your rhetorical argument is worse than mine because I decided that you must be bad faith because slur words slur in words something something
Precious children have been unalived in Gaza. Gaza has the largest number of child amputees in history.
Why is Miss Rachel focusing so much on Gaza when there are Israeli children who've been taken hostage too, children in Israel who've been murdered too, and it's like, well, because of the numbers. Sometimes numbers are all we have to go on. These are some of the official numbers.
Why is it that we are doing whataboutism? It's because of the numbers. Okay, cool. If I bring you numbers about those groups, can you be willing to step up and do something on behalf of those people? Or are you just going to say, it's the numbers, stupid? Because that's not a good enough answer, bro. That's not a good enough answer. You're going to have to say something a little bit more than just, it's the numbers, stupid. Because that is bullshit. That is high levels of bullshit. And you know it. You know it's bullshit.
Given by the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health of children killed as of March 2025. And the reason that these are the official numbers is because this is the number that they have names for. These are confirmed named deaths as a direct result of Israeli action, although studies have shown that the indirect death toll is likely much, much higher. But then I see people in the anti-Zionist movement saying that the official number of dead, which right now is in the neighborhood of about 60,000, is propaganda designed to minimize Israel's atrocities. And I'm like, do you know how many people 60,000 is? 60,000 is the size of a large football stadium. 60,000 is bigger than my hometown. Who would think that 60,000 is okay, but 200,000 isn't acceptable? But then there's that problem of the vulgarity of numbers again. At what number is action mandatory? 60,000? 600,000? 6 million? If someone is not repulsed by 6,000 dead, they are not going to be repulsed by 600,000. Remember all the way back at the beginning of the video when we were talking about this revulsion at empathy?
Here's an idea. How about any death? How about the life of any citizen lost? Is that enough for a retaliatory action? I would justify it as such, because it's the intent behind. It's not the number, it's the intent. For some reason, we're not capable of saying that. I find that very strange. I find that very wild, I find that very strange.
In education and in children's media, the war on Sesame Street, the war on Mr. Rogers, the war on SEL, the war on empathy itself. We know from research that this type of education is extremely effective. When you're learning math, attaching a story to it helps children learn. That does not stop being true when you grow up. That's why personalized narratives can be much more effective than just numbers alone. But again, empathy is also politically inexpedient. You cannot, on the one hand, raise a generation of children with like a deep sense of empathy, even if all of the research shows that that's going to net you the best academic outcomes, and then expect those kids to have the same shark-eyed outlook on international politics as their parents. The war on empathy starts at home, and this attack on both children's educational media and methods for raising emotionally healthy children in general is a symptom of a broader sickness, because these people do not care about raising autonomous human beings in an environment of trust and love. They want Milford men who will do as they are told. This is a thing that Miss Rachel has done most effectively, and I wish we would see more of in pro-Palestinian activism, the focus on individual stories.
أنا بتشكر عم مبارك وبتشكر المس ريشة وبتشكر بيسي راف. أنا بحب كل واحد ساعدني.
In cases like getting an international community to engage with the horrors of what's going on in Gaza, personalizing these narratives, showing anecdotes about the cost helps people to stay focused, motivates people in ways that numbers alone just don't. And I'm not saying that there aren't contexts where numbers are extremely important. Obviously there are, but sometimes they're just numbers.
I am tired of hearing people who have long ago set aside the concerns of childhood, telling everybody what children really need. I'll tell you what children need. They need adults who will protect them from the ever-ready molders of their world. Could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important? Yes. It starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go?
Miss Rachel has posted videos of this little girl named Rahaf a few times.
Wake up, little bunnies! Skip, little bunny, skip, 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 little bunny, skip, skip, skip.
She's a 3-year-old double amputee and has been successfully evacuated from Gaza and is now in the United States with her mom. A few days after the first Rahaf video, she followed it up with this post of Rahaf after she realized she didn't have legs anymore. And she's about the same age as my oldest.
Here. Thank you.
You know, maybe a few months older. And when I see these kids like Rahaf,
when I see kids that are like my child, I immediately do the thing that I said that all of those people that are right-wing Nazis and bigots literally said is going to cause problems. But you see, it's different because it's my kids. That fast. That fast. That fast. We have been here for 3 hours, 34 minutes, and 30 seconds on the dot at the end of this sentence. Dot. She literally just did the shit she was complaining about in the first hour. But it's bad when the right wing does it. They accuse us of this. I'm gonna mock them about it. And then I immediately fall for it. Empathy, tugging on the heartstrings, tugging, cause tugging on the heartstrings, tugging. If you were honest, and said, I hate that I see this because I don't want that to be my kids. It wouldn't save you from the fact that you're falling for the very same shit that's happening all the time, and you are going to be wearing a very proud owner of 2 Fell For It Again awards, but I could say, I understand. Do you know why? Because that's what empathy and sympathy is. You best stop believing in being a chud, because you are one now. Ridiculous. Oh my god. Unironically wasting all of our time. So effectively, it's okay to use emotional tricks and traps to get you to go along with people's ideas. And it's also okay when the talented, musically gifted and researched left wing do something. But when the right is the first to mobilize and put a name on that thing that is happening and to do it, that's wrong and they're lying. Except they're not, because now here's me doing it too. Wrap this shit the fuck up, get us out of here.
all I can think is it just as easily could have been mine. It could be my kids in Natrahaf living through this hell, but for some fluke of geography. Throughout history, there was never much concern over the murder of children in wars or conflicts. Children were not considered full persons. They were just extensions of their parents, future adults, but property in the meantime. So this expectation that civilians should be protected, that children have fundamental rights, is not only new, but is extremely at odds with the way civilization has been doing things for millennia. Hence,
it is not new. What you're trying to push this into is to push this into the realm of transgenderism. You literally started out trying to demonize people and doing the whole bit with PBS and fucking public broadcasting so that you could be able to fuck around and make an argument to say all of these people were fucking monsters that don't know how to do it correctly. That's why I said what I said. Stop that. That's new. We don't want that. Stop that.
we have the Genocide Convention, but that is also at odds with another thing that is suddenly respected in this brave new world: state sovereignty.
States have never acted for purely disinterested humanitarian reasons. The novel idea was that the protection of humanity was in every state's interest, and it was well understood in the aftermath of World War II that action against genocide would require a willingness to use force and to risk the lives of one's own. The belief was that the price to the world of such a risk would not be as great as the price of inaction. But whose world were the drafters of the Genocide Convention and the refugee conventions which soon followed thinking of?
I see a lot of people, a lot of content creators, describing what's going on in Gaza as the worst humanitarian crisis in history, or the worst genocide in the world right now. And if we must rely on the vulgarity of numbers, that is not even remotely true. What is happening in Sudan right now is killing more people. It is the greatest starvation crisis in decades. And there's a good chance you didn't even know about this. Even George W. Bush's government 20 years ago was able to describe what was happening in Darfur as a genocide.
I concluded, that genocide has been committed in Darfur.
The first and only time the United States government has used that word to describe a conflict as it was ongoing. Now both the government and the media not only turn a blind eye to what's happening in Sudan, but make it worse by cutting funding from agencies like USAID, which is going to mean the deaths from starvation of thousands in Sudan.
Elon Musk called Bono a liar and an idiot.
You need to understand, USAID, that is important. You are killing people. Also, never mind the fact that 11 of my friends and 100 of my followers all seemingly are content creators who received money through these means. Do not look into the money. Do not look. Do not look. Do not look.
Saying 0 people had died and that USAID was riddled with corruption and waste.
Yes, actually, because of you. There's an obvious racial component here, same as it was with the international community's response to Rwanda. The point is, the situation in Gaza is not the only time that the international community has turned a blind eye to suffering that it might have had the power to lessen or even stop. It's not even the only one going on right now. You know, the reason I did this video, beyond trying to raise money and show support for Miss Rachel and people like her,
is to harass people and say that you're not doing enough and you need to become leftist, otherwise you're a heartless monster. Don't you care about the kids? The kids. Don't you care about the kids? The kids. Don't you care about the kids? The kids. Sesame Street, don't you care about the kids? The kids. Jim Henson, don't you care about the kids? The kids. The kids. The kids. The kids. The kids. My stupid ass arguments about things that are compared to ride times at Disney
was because I wanted to understand why this sort of thing happens. Just, from a historical perspective and a sociological one. But the problem with the why it happens is it doesn't also provide and here's how to stop it.
Oh no, there's a simple way to stop it. Conquer the world and make everybody do what you want. Oh, I'm sorry. Did that make you into a totalitarian? Oh, well. That's crazy. How did that happen? How did that happen? Damn, how did that happen? How did you turn into a tyrant by trying to save the world? Oh my god, I'm laughing because 1, it's that sad, and 2, I looked over and I saw something extremely funny inside of the group chat involving my woman Kasog and his woman. Ironically, it all comes to a head because you literally think race mixing is bad, but you also think having nations are bad too. How could you solve all the problems of the world, become a one government? and start crushing people under your foot and under your heel. But you can't do that because people like freedom. So, what's the best way to do that? I don't know. Make everybody into an amorphous blob where multiculturalism and multinationalism means that you can't be proud of where you're from. And then eventually you'll get control of everything, and then the one world government will finally outlaw these problems. Except nothing will fucking change.
And I know it's not satisfying. You know, you want me to give a list of prescriptive actions to say, like, this is what needs to happen in order for the famine to be halted, in order for the killing to stop. And the truth is, I don't know. As with all modern famines and all genocides, what this boils down to right now is a very small group of people in positions of power needing to make different choices. Basically needing to be different people, which won't happen. So the reality is there is not much we can do, but I do not want that to be mistaken for saying that we should not do what we can. The fundraiser at the bottom of this video is the same one that got Rahaf out of Gaza, and I don't want to get into the weeds of it right now, but it's very difficult and very expensive to even get one child out, let alone to get aid in. But even if a lot of help can only do a little bit of good, like let's say we raise $50,000 and that helps get one kid out.
It says whoever saves one life saves the world entire.
If you give money to this aid that I put my name on, it not only buys me social credit to say that I'm a good person and you can't attack me, therefore if you criticize me, you hate kids and you hate living and you hate Palestine and you hate and you hate and you hate. It also makes me look like a good person because that's the kind of Asian I am. Twing! Very good. Masterclass. Masterclass of being fucking useless and having nothing to say while also packing it full of those bread tube lies that you usually only sell on Nebula. Thank you for coming out of your Nebula hole yet again for the same time again for everybody to hear about it again. You learned nothing, Lindsay. You learned nothing.
I don't care how many, even if it's just one. We get so wrapped up in numbers in our society.
Second, I don't think constant international attention, the increasing international attention, is doing nothing. The fact that focus...
It is doing nothing! Do you know why it's doing nothing? Do you know why it's doing nothing? Lindsay! Because your spokesperson for your entire party, for the narrative, and for all of the activists that are supposed to be content creators and influencers online is a fucking moron! You have no agileness when it comes to your politics. You have no agileness when it comes to your rhetoric. You have no sense of agency or agility because the person who uses it as a scapegoat logic to justify buying shit. And you hide behind him because some of you want to fuck him for his money. And everybody else is just biting their chance to be the next one to take the spotlight. Because none of you can say no. You're sluts. You're whores. You're whores for it. You run to the tip. You run to the tip. You run to the tip. It is not our job to be world police. As I said already, we don't want to be in the position of having to fund the war on both sides, giving aid and then having to supply weapons to defend themselves from the now weaponized aid we sent to the people who are very clearly being led by terrorists who want the destruction of the other side. Just in that alone, we do not want to have to play world police between the two of them because it is possible to get freedom for Palestinians and to be able to have there be a Jewish state that is able to do business and at best, or rather I should say at worst, talks shit against the Israelis. Certainly, talking trash would be better than dropping bombs, no? Seeing a Palestinian say, hey, you're Jew, and seeing a Jewish person say, hey, your brand of hummus is bad, is much better than people being used as meat shields and making a perpetual forever argument to wage a perpetual forever war in the Fertile Crescent. And it's also possible that it's not my job, and it's not your job, and it's not his job, or her job, or him, her, him, to do the work that you say you feel called to do. So, by all means, be called to do it. Go do it. Be free. I release you to the argument. I cede it to you. Don't do some real work. Go power race war. But it's not going to change shit. Because this is not how it's going to solve the problem. Because the world's not perfect. And we're not perfect. And you cannot ask for people to have a political opinion and expect them to arrive at your standpoint. Because we're not the world police. We don't live in their country. We don't live in their region. We don't live under their totalitarian regimes. We don't live under the threat of survival. Some of us would not be able to survive that argumentation. Yet you put some individuals like myself and my friend and his wife and my woman, or rather I should say his current partner, soon to be remarried wife, and me and my partner. You put the four of us together with a bunch of fucking people who you would call Nazis, and I can almost promise you we're coming out pillars of the fucking community with several hundred children, 90 of which are mine. But no, seriously, if you put people like me, if you put people who actually have done the hard work in just local politics alone, you're going to see people become pillars and leaders of the community who know what the fuck to do. Do you know why? Because they're of the place and they're of the people and they're of these things. And they know how to work together to get shit to go along where they need them to be for the purposes of maintaining that state of survival. You don't seem to want that for people. You seem to want to trap them in this forever argument where they can't be allowed to defend themselves. And I'm sorry, that's not good enough. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You don't get to hold them permanently in a position where they are meant to not protect themselves. They deserve to have the right to protect themselves. They also deserve to have the right to not listen to you. They also deserve to have the right to completely wash their hands of the problem and deal with what they have to and just say, you know what, we're not going to go to the Middle East. We're not going to go on vacation. We're not going to go there to be a part of the esports awards. We're just going to have to accept that that's something we're not going to do. Because that would be a smart thing. And you can call them evil. You can say that they don't care about people. You can call them whatever the fuck you want until you're blue in the face. But they're not going to get blown up. I'm not going to get it blown up. I'm not going to let it happen to my family. I'm not going to let it happen to my second family. I'm not going to let it happen to any person who can hear my voice. I'm going to make sure they hear the arguments that they need to see. And they hear the arguments that they need to hear, and they see the evidence that they need to see, and that they open their eyes and they see that you're not telling them the whole picture. Or you're telling them a very touchy-feely, big feels event that would then trick them into giving them energy to fund your forever war, where you can somehow be correct on how you do things, but you are incorrect on how you do things. But you're never wrong. You're just incorrect happily and slightly. Because it's the numbers. It's the numbers. It's the numbers, Lindsay. It's the numbers. One is supposed to be too much. But unfortunately for you, no matter how many times he does it, you don't seem to correct people like Hassan Piker. You also don't seem to be interested in correcting Bad Empanada. Oh, is that not your problem? They're kind of actually doing a lot of damage to supporting the Palestinian movement because it seems that the anti-Semite squad of Hatred.tv are very interested in telling other people what to do. And I'm sorry, no one's gonna be your toy soldier if you can't even say, yeah, he's fucking delusional and he's fucking crazy, don't listen to them. You're not even willing to do that, bro. You're not even willing to do that. So what the fuck are we actually talking about?
Has stayed on this issue in the news could make the difference in saving a lot of lives. In the words of one Holocaust survivor.
Today's marches are having a very hopeful aspect. It is so large, so persistent, so global, that eventually the Western leadership, which are trying to deny what is actually going on, will be forced to face up to it. And I think we are not far from that. There was no parallel to that in the Jewish Holocaust experience. In fact, there was great abandonment.
And it may not feel like it, but fighting back, making it politically untenable to continue these attacks on free speech, popularizing, pushing back, whatever country you're in, but especially in this one, is actually super important. I am personally exhausted that the fact that...
Yeah, it is important. That's why people are doing it. But they're doing it from the right wing. Because you were the ones that were doing the censorship. You were always the ones doing the censorship. And then bragging about the fact that you were able to censor your enemies. And now you're upset. Because you want to frame it as a right-wing problem. But it's actually all of you and the problems you left open. But you were more than happy to mock somebody when you thought, oh no, my policies are now backfiring on me. Cope, seethe, and sneed.
This even is a controversy in the first place, that we here in the US are in the position of having to claw back rights that most of us took for granted our whole lives. But it must be done. We can't do everything, but we must do what we can. We must do it at home for our children, and we must do what we can for them for their children. They are the same.
What children...
No. Somebody else's kid is not the same as my kid. Stop that.
Probably need to hear most from us adults.
No, I'm not going to let you besmirch and use this man as a fucking digital ghoul to try and scold me into what I should do. Go fuck yourself, Lindsay. No. Absolutely not. Nearly 4 hours on the dot, chat. What a waste. What a fucking wastrel. Lord have mercy. My back is a little bit sweaty. Only because I didn't turn that fan on. Regardless, we did it. And we didn't learn shit. We didn't learn shit. But hopefully I entertained you. And maybe you learned something. Be it as it may. The time is now. Bring up the goddamn time. Bring up the goddamn time. OBS! Path of Exile 2! The time is now 6:04 p.m. Technically, I need to step away and go make dinner. And then I will return on the morrow at a later time, later tonight. Perhaps, maybe. I have something in plan for the weekend, and we'll see what happens, because we'll be playing it by ear. But until I return from dinner, I am Carl, and I will see you all at the same bat time, on the same bat channel. And I hope you all have something wonderful to do with the rest of your time today. I love you, goodbye. And, reminder, we are doing a 3-month drive. And with the humble donation of Exo Crusher, we have already crossed the first milestone in the donation rewards. There's currently 4 subs left on the first reward track, where you can be able to get new alerts for the memberships. Which means it's only 9 away from the supporter-inspired content and live streams, and only 29 away from forcing me to color my hair. And 100 away from being able to get a community-led giveaway with the proceeds of the donations and raisings. So, show that you like black people today, chat, and donate your money to the Carl HOA. Because remember, as members of the Negrohood HOA, it is your job to make sure that everybody cares about black people by giving me money. And if you're not a member of the Negrohood HOA, consider becoming a Carlist and become a member of the Negrohood by clicking on any of the links that I brought up in the bot in chat, or on any of the links that you can find on my material, where you can find Carl and Carl-related accessories. Once again, I am Single Player Carl, and this has been me reacting to the retarded dog shit that is Lindsay Ellis' newest video, where she tries to scold us into giving money to Hamas. Again, thank you, goodbye. I love you. I love you very much. I love you, 95,000.